Yes.
Okay, I thought it was further down.
No, it's right there, boy.
I mean, it's like Madison County where we go down Highway 98, you know, we got the signs up for the county signs.
Yeah.
But one direction, it could be Jackson County, and if you come from the other direction, Madison County sign ought to be a half mile down the road because the county line is the center of the highway.
Oh, they're staggered. You do it every time you come into Danielsville. So when you cross the new bridge right here in Danielsville, you start up the hill, you'll see city limits.
Yeah.
But if you're going down the hill, going back home, city limits is all the way to the River Bridge.
Well, it's like down Crawford W. Long.
Crawford W. Long the same way. Jackson County's that way. Now, what's even crazier is over at Mines Road where we run that water line. So Jackson County, Commerce is right here, Jackson County, but Lanes County's right there. You almost got a three-way stop, 3 different counties.
Yeah.
Depending on where you stand. Lim Edwards, at the end of Lim Edwards, you cross the bridge, that's Clark County. You go about 1,000 foot, and now you back in Overbrook County. We've got a lot of those.
Well, Grant Hill over there, the venue, it was funny as hell. Our building department just wore these folks out because they built a whole venue. They built their home, and then 150 foot away, they built this wedding venue. One's in Madison County and one's in Jackson County.
Well, the venue turns out, the only thing on there, so what the deal was Madison County was trying to shut them down so they didn't pull building permits.
Yeah.
They did pull in Jackson County.
Yeah.
The only thing in Madison County is the driveway.
Did they have a lot survey that showed where the line was?
The old lots, the old survey.
The old property plat did not show the county line.
Right. So how'd they find it?
We told them that they couldn't have that.
But how'd you know where the line was?
They contacted Jackson County, and they couldn't locate the county line.
I wonder how.
GPS.
Well, now granted, all county lines could be hit or miss.
Exactly, that's my point.
Especially Madison County. Well,
the issue was Jackson County has their county line surveyed, and Madison County does not. Because I live.
They actually paid the surveyor to survey the whole county line. I doubt that.
I'm assuming because I live 3 mailboxes down, and we paid property taxes on 15 acres in Madison County that does not exist and have for hundreds of years. It's been the family name because we never had it surveyed. When they had it surveyed, they had to go through both counties, and Jackson County is one that has the county line.
In Jackson County, Banks and Jackson at Banks Crossing, that is why, if you look at where restaurants are located at there, Banks County had the thing where they could do liquor by the drink, where Jackson County didn't. And that's why all the restaurants are located where they're at.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Commerce and Jackson County did not want that development at the Tanger Mall.
I just know that, your county lines are set out in your city and county charters. They're old and they're usually described pretty poorly. Not much better than from the Poplar to the whatever.
Well, I will tell you this, we do have a 2024 city limits update.
Yeah.
We did not resurvey the city, but I took it to Owen, and he went parcel by parcel.
Right.
And created the line.
And that's what I was going to say. So your line's created with GIS, which is nowhere near as accurate as a survey.
Oh, no.
So to say that the county line runs through the middle of the Tractor Supply instead of 30 feet to the left or right, nobody knows that.
One of the funniest things, Mike, that I was just a subcontractor on the job. The reason that the Kubota and Toyota hangars at the Jackson County Airport are located where they're at is because Jackson County made concessions to Toyota and Kubota that the city of Jefferson didn't.
Yeah.
And the city of Jefferson wanted upteen dollars for these jets that sit up there to take their little CEOs here and there.
Mhm.
And we literally put these hangars up with restrooms in them. And then 6 months later, we were up there putting the plumbing in the same pad that they took that building down and moved it to the other end of the runway.
Yeah,
So that they were in Jackson County and out in the city limits of Jefferson.
yeah.
And for the money that those folks got, I thought, I mean, it's like kids pissing on each other's shoes at the playground.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I was gonna say, Jack, you think we're fractious in Madison County, we can't hold a candle for Jackson.
No, they're the role model. We ain't nothing for you though.
yeah,
Video, audio too?
That's okay.
I'm just,
I'll go on the record with that.
I'm just proud that we're not them.
well,
I don't see anything getting better no time soon, is it?
Yeah, it's getting that way.
Franklin
Yeah.
County has some massive elections, and I can't envision
they,
they change it.
Yeah.
they just got more money than the show force can jump over up there.
Yeah.
So, you know,
No substitute 35 miles on 85.
yeah, you know, there's a reason you want to argue about money up there. Here, I mean, you know, we argue about who's going to get the double wide.
I started reading through our new code this morning.
Have you,
I'm encouraged already.
all right, I'm gonna do that next week.
Everything is defined.
Everything. Beach with.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it.
I
We're not going
glanced,
to the beach though.
I literally 10 minutes, I glanced at it. I went straight to how the procedure for rezones goes. Did you see this about a community meeting? So there has to be a community meeting prior to the hearings. This must be something standard that they just have in all of theirs.
I didn't get that far.
Yeah, I go straight to the juicy parts.
I'm not spread a word.
It's a lot of reading. I mean, if
Wall kill, like an
you're reading it with the intent of
northwest of.
Understanding.
understanding it,
Yeah.
So it's going to be halfway
They send me
along.
the audio on for all this stuff.
So I'm gonna go
All over the book version.
85 to 77 to 81 to Bingham, take a right. We'll take a right there at 64, and then we'll go up.
I know we're going up through West Virginia.
Oh, yeah, if I used to do hobby.
Coming in that bottom way.
Yeah.
it's too hot to get outside and do anything.
I thought about something.
That's pretty good.
Don't let me forget. Yeah, yeah. I don't even know what it all is yet. I'm not even.
I got a list coming.
Yeah, I just don't have the dollar figure.
That's the way we got the business.
How much is
We
it?
go all the way across and hit 80.
Okay, but I did think of something.
Is it 80?
Maryland,
81.
always got that liquid deal
I think it's
where
right
we're
here,
going
I
with.
had asked Keller
They
last
buy all
night.
of them stuff.
Cancel those, but
When we hit it,
how much more to let
you go all the way.
Oh, did you? I just have to think about the stop check, and of course, they got me, might have something matching.
Right there, that's my goal.
That's right.
Canada.
Okay.
Hey, just text me a total dollar amount. I mean, I know what the success in it at. Send me the rest of it.
Yeah, we're
Thanks, buddy.
up here, and we got Keller's with some friends that they will stay with for a few days, and we'll come back down to Pennsylvania.
So, for you all that may not know that guy, that's Paul Metz. He is a new, he's been here a couple months now, 3 or 4 months. He's the one building that Spring House Farms down in Coleman, event that you seen online. But hired him in under maintenance to work with TC. And he has been nothing short of outstanding in his role. There was times I was ready to just be done with it altogether, but he not only changed his bosses, it's great, and we're getting all kinds of stuff done. They literally went through that art barn up there and had it done in 2.5 weeks. From it used to be nothing but an open basically a bathroom and a pole barn. Now it's completely enclosed, all the windows in, the siding's up, inside, outside, electrical's done, air conditioning's in it. That boy ain't joking. Loves to work.
Who does your trades work in-house, like electrical and plumbing?
Who does what?
Like the electrical and plumbing, and
TC's got his electrical license.
he does, okay,
We contract out most of our heating and air.
Yeah. okay.
But if it's just something that breaks, something small, like this little bathroom remodel in the gym, they'll do it in-house.
Yeah.
Like Mark done the conversion on the old gym over to 480 volts from 277, what it was. But
So Terry said he was running just a few minutes late also.
as of recent, I literally can say, probably the last 4 or 5 months, most of all the employees we've brought in, including the road departments, 4 or 5 that we brought in, it's been great. I mean, I was out today, I went on them hours today, I went on 172 today. Everybody's happy to have a job.
Is that right?
And I'm rolling up on them and they're working when I get there, not propped up on the hood of the truck.
Is the sheriff still having trouble hiring?
It's better.
It is.
His goes in cycles. He's either 2 short or 10 short. He'll fill them all up and then he's 2 short. It won't be 3 weeks, he's back short again.
How many partners are you with?
Oh my gosh. Well over 100. They're all over the place now.
How many offices?
20, give or take. I mean, a lot of them are little offices with just a few lawyers in them in New Jersey or Montana. They got one in Montana. It's all insurance defense. I'm an outlier. I stay in the corner and try not to be remembered.
The black sheep.
The black sheep.
I've got a lot of way of my work too.
I got a phone call earlier today from one person in our department down here that said that you had reached out to a former employee of ours and wanted if he'd get his law degree and he could take over legal counsel for our county.
Who is this now?
I thought they were joking, because I said, whoever called you needs to quit drinking and calling you at night, because that's not going to happen with that person. And he said, no, it was actually that person that called. It wasn't even a third party. And I was like, oh, my God. Yeah.
So who is this again?
CR.
Oh.
That you had informed him that he needed to get his legal degree and he could take over legal counsel for the county.
Okay.
That you actually make a lot of calls to him, getting updates on how things need to go.
Okay.
And that he was coming back with a sizable raise.
Oh, really?
Wow.
I tell him that too.
Well, I don't know what you told that part. That's the part he told the other guy.
Okay.
And then there's another bit. Look, all jokes aside now, there's another guy. The guy doing the animal control stuff right now. Jacob Fanning. He's been Johnny on the spot. His paperwork is pristine for court purposes, and he's pretty sharp on the law. At least in the animal world. Moving Jonathan over from basically code enforcement over to primarily building inspection to take some of the heat off of Eddie has been a very good move. Yeah. We got to do something at some point, and I'm worried about the senior center because we still don't have a director there. And I'm almost to the point, I told Christina this the other day, I think if I hired Mother Teresa, I think they're going to be mad about it because they got it in their head who they want. And I'm afraid no matter what we do, I know Brian's hearing the same stories I'm hearing. We get the same phone calls. But
Who is they?
the seniors,
All the people that,
Okay.
okay.
they're signing petitions. They want this person to be the boss, and this person to be the boss.
It's like a mafia.
Well.
That's so good.
And here lies the facts on it. The girl can run those 4 walls. She can. The but she cannot go anywhere outside those four walls. She can't take it to the level that we would like to broaden her to. But to day-to-day operations, she's fine. I give her that.
She's good for, like, the assistant when they need somebody to,
Correct.
for the leadership. And I think if we get the person, I think we can do it. But Alicia's gonna have to, understand, and then she needs to talk to them and say, hey, this is my role, this is this other person's role.
Yeah.
This is what they're doing. And
In a few years, if she was behind a really good director for
Yeah.
a few years, I think she would have potential.
to do the other stuff.
The last thing I want to do is do what has previously been done and put somebody that wasn't quite ready into a role and they constantly struggle.
That's Madison County one.
Fingerprints.
But, see, I know we talked about that, like leisure services and having somebody. I think would be good to have somebody overall and pay that person. And then, as long as they just I don't want them to, they gotta make sure too, they stay focused on the senior center and not just on the,
Oh, yeah.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
The whole, so we gotta have a person that understands and can do all of
What
that.
are the funding sources for the senior center? I know there's federal funding for the meals,
And then
state funding for a lot of things.
us. They pay a membership, but it's still,
Minimal.
yeah, it comes back to
So there's not that much state, it's mostly local?
Yeah.
Okay.
the majority of it's local.
Okay.
But, I mean, they'll charge a little bit for them to do stuff, but then most of them.
Sure, that was a piece of purpose that you're trying to.
And Derek said you're bringing ice cream to you and he's late.
Well, Lee said it was too hot to be farming, so I don't know what you've been up to.
Hey, well, look, we're talking about we need help. Well, Lee, we
He's in
can,
my district, we just.
we give him some more other jobs, then he won't be over here with us and be doing something else. So,
Let's go back to where you
hey,
started.
we get you a few dollars. I mean,
I think you're in competition with Stephanie Harvey, who can volunteer the most.
You know, I can see you.
She's cutting way back.
Yep.
All right. I appreciate everybody coming today to the Madison County Board of Commissioners retreat, Government Complex Meeting Room, June 25th, 2024 at 3:17 p.m. Christina, we'll do like we did the last one. I'll let you,
All right, so this meeting is picking up where we left off from our last retreat. So we got through the first page, and this is the second half of that agenda. We've discussed over the past 6 months some of the organizations that we fund outside of the Board of Commissioners. So like the Chamber, the Extension Office, the DA's office, those kind of things. So we put a topic on here to review of charters. It's charters and contracts. Which one specifically does the board want to review first? What order y'all want to go in? The original goal of this was when we started the retreat, I guess about 2 or 3 months ago, that we would have made it further in those meetings to where we could have had those answers then to have a better understanding before budget work sessions start. I think this is a really good opportunity for us to review the IDA's charter. I know we have done the economic development meetings, but so we understand what their role is and their responsibility and our role and our responsibility, how the two entities work together. The same thing for the chamber. I know it's, yesterday we had some questions about that contract, and there's been contracts about the extension office and so on and so forth. So the question for this one is, where do y'all want staff to start reviewing? MOAS is another one. I know there's been a lot of social media posts and conversations, and I'm sure some of your constituents have reached out to you about concerns with MOAS. We fund a small portion of their budget each year, and then there's a contract there. The contract is old, and I don't know how often legal counsel will recommend for us to review contracts to update those, and But like they own their building, but we own the property. We help when we can with the
No such
maintenance.
thing. I don't even know, I wasn't even listening to who you're talking about, but a building is affixed to property and becomes real estate.
So that's a contract we need to go back and
Which
look at
contract was it?
with MOAS.
Yeah, and that was one that Victor insisted on, and the county said, okay. I told them all that I didn't think that provision in there about, I think that provision about the county having to pay them some reimbursement for their building.
Yes, that provision.
We terminate it is probably illegal under a multi-year contracting law.
Yes. So there's situations like that it's stuff that was done before any of us was here that's not correct and needs to be corrected. But what I was saying was, when they have issues with their building and need some repairs done, if we can, we send guys over there to fix a toilet leak, so on and so forth. They've got some bigger, costly issues that they need repaired, like their septic tank system. There's a list of other things, some fencing and run lines and stuff that they're trying to reach out to us for, but according to an older contract that's written that's not up to par, we're trying to navigate that, so that's why this topic is on the agenda. If there's anywhere specific you want to start with MOAS and the chamber and the IDA, but more of the IDA for the IDA board and the BOC board to understand that role. I know we just went through that economic development and we have all that strategic plan, we have a timeline, we have goals and missions laid out now.
So, but you're talking about three types of entities there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about chambers and contracts as a whole.
Well, so Chamber and MOAS are nonprofit corporations that we have contracts with.
Mm-hmm.
IDA is a separate political subdivision of the state of Georgia, although its members are served at the pleasure of the Board of Commissioners. And then DFAC's Health Department, they are state library to some extent, are sort of quasi-state agencies with local offices that all have their separate sets of statutes about how they're overseen and the county's role in that.
And that's kind of, I guess I didn't explain it very well, that's the direction I was wanting to take it, is more of an educational point for our board, so then when we have the library in front of us, or we have defects in front of us, they understand what they can't ask and what they can or cannot determine. Right. Just like MOAS is, we donate, we do not donate, we pay for a service for that goes towards their budget, but this board doesn't get a say on how those funds are used.
Yeah, unless there's a contractual term negotiated of you have to spend these funds in this way.
Yeah.
Same thing with the library. We got that email from them about the employees of the library are Athens Regional Library System employees, but they're coming to us to ask for a raise. And that just doesn't.
Yeah.
And the library is the most Wild West probably of any of the ones we've mentioned so far, as far as just not having a good legal structure that explains how it works. It's a lot of, if I can editorialize for a second, it started out as what a lot of law seems to be going to. It's no longer statutes, case decisions, and regulations. It's people sitting in little offices and bureaucracies putting things on the interweb. And suddenly that is law.
Well, they're all really, and I know most all of them probably prior to you, or I know at least MOAS was because Victor's still on, not being disrespectful to Victor, but it's very poorly written and or at least needs to be updated from the fact that the current agreement we have says that we donate like $3 per person.
Yeah, for
based on
capital
population. When the true number is we're already around 370 because of the increases the BOCs give over the years to MOAS. So we're already outside.
Well, how are we justifying paying more than we're contractually obligated to?
They, at times, somewhere in the past, they've come, they've come and asked.
Population. You're
Yeah,
talking about MOAS.
MOAS, it's $3 per capita. But if you do the math that they receive from the county, it comes out to $370. Only thing I can equate to that is at some point in time, they've come in and they said, hey, can we get a $5,000 increase? And they said, yeah. Years later, they come back and ask for $5,000 more. They got an increase, but as of today, they're at $370, even though the contract says $3.
At a minimum, for those to be legal, they have to be in the minutes, and they should have been amendments to the contract.
This is why we say we need to look at all the contracts, because we think that this has went on over the years, and it's not just with them. Boaz is, I don't know what's going on there, but I will tell y'all, I have reached out and said, if you would like me to help you with your budget, please bring it to me. I don't know, I know Brian's got Facebook, Dennis has got Facebook. They are blowing up Facebook with, we're broke, we have no money, we're gonna have to close down. And right now, everybody's firing at Boaz back, saying the county needs to give you more money. Oglethorpe needs to, county needs to give me more money. And y'all shouldn't be bankrupt, this, that, and the other. Y'all need more funding. We're all gonna get together, and we're gonna sell auctions or have auctions, and we're gonna do fundraisers, because y'all shouldn't be out of money. The problem is, it's a service that we need, and if Boaz can't do the books and can't run it accordingly, maybe, I don't want a new department, but it may end up being that.
Well,
Because I want to say their budget, based off of the number that I heard, I might have saw it in writing. Christina, didn't they send us something in an email that said they had like a $980,000 budget?
That's what she said when she handed.
Yeah.
She said it's almost $1 million a year.
So that's
operating budget.
$200,000 more than a rec department. I don't,
well, see, I've learned something today that I didn't know. I thought that Boaz was a department of the counties, because I think Brian would share this, my sentiments on this. I don't know what the calls that I've got because of their Facebook post.
oh yeah.
And, you know, my opinion of it was any press release should at least be forwarded through this office for some courtesy review, if nothing else, before it's put out there, because all the calls I get are, you know, this is a necessary service, you guys need to, you guys need to, you guys need to. And my comment back is, okay, we will. How much more do you want to pay on your taxes for? Because what they're saying, their thing is $750,000. But I mean, rough math, that's what it's at. You know, so do you want us to increase your taxes by that to support one department? And now I find out that, you know, they may be our child, but they're a stepchild.
Yeah, well, the concept, I'm saying, because it is a government, I mean, we can only contract for services that are otherwise government services. So we're contracting for animal shelter with them, just like we contract for fire protection in the volunteer fire departments.
That's all it is.
That's all it is.
No say-so over the day-to-day operations. And Oglethorpe plays a 30% part in that. I think Oglethorpe gives them $2 per capita.
I remember.
But the ratio, I saw the ratio, they take in 40,000 animals here. Down there, they take in something like 20,000 animals. So, and Oglethorpe has really been blasted. And I don't know why they're picking on Oglethorpe so bad, and it may be something Oglethorpe's done, but me and their chairman's talked a lot, and they can't get ahead of the whole animal curve down there with Moaz. Even though they got a good relationship with Moaz, it ain't coming directly from Moaz, it's coming from the citizens. But as long as they keep going out telling everybody that they're going broke and the shelter's full, and if you don't do something, we're gonna close, that don't sit well, because it falls back on us.
Yeah, well, it does, I guess, it falls back on us somewhat, but, I mean, it looks like to me, it looks like, but I'm just saying, it looks like to me that to understand these contracts, somebody needs to review them that understands what it says, and I mean, you may have already done some of that, Christine, and I don't know, I mean, we haven't given you that assignment or anything, but it sounds like that's what needs to be reviewed, and then we need to look at, because you've already looked a little bit at where we're at, and say, this is what we need to change from the board standpoint, because I'm like Dennis right now, I'm learning stuff I didn't know, so unless
Well, in that contract we have with MOAS, it does state that we can request their budget and all of their budget financial statements.
So,
We have, and we haven't received those.
right,
But in other contracted services that we have, it doesn't say in the contract that we can request
right.
their financial statements, but we, in that contract, still give them money, pay for service. So,
Well, maybe we need to have council look at all those and make them uniform to say this is what we want, and then as we go through these next budget setting things, we say this is what we want and require, you know what I'm saying? And then, you know, as we go through the budget, we say, MOAS, if you're in dire need, you need to share with us where all the money's going, and then we can see where we're at, because, you know, to provide us a service. But as long as you don't provide it, it'd be sort of like we talked about with the library and some of those other, here defects. You know what I mean? And the fire departments, I mean, we require the fire departments to tell us at least where they're spending some of that money. And I mean, it's pretty easy than that, but God.
So they get about $111,000 from us. That's our contributing factor as of today. That's what we do.
To who?
To MOAS.
To mow it. Well,
Okay, that's $3 per thousand. So how does it get up to 300 something?
That is at 370, because I'm just knowing what our last budget was for them was about 110,000. I divided it by 30,120
It's
pieces.
$3.70, not 300.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was 370,000. I thought, how we tripled it? Okay.
That's why you're an attorney and not a CPA.
So, well, the most disturbing part about it was it was only 2 weeks after
yes.
they give us the report, which is the first one we've had in years, and I was very thankful for it. I thought it was a very good presentation. It was great, but at no point in that did they say, guys, we got a problem.
no, they
And
didn't.
we're not gonna make it to the end of the year.
And so we don't know anything about it. And that's gonna be, when they call me and give a response, I'll say, well, you need to check with MOAS and find out. We contract them for services. We're paying for this, but yet we had a meeting with them and nobody has told us that it was a problem. And now it's all over Facebook, it's a problem. And I don't have a problem. I'll go down there and would ask them face to face now and say, why y'all put this stuff on Facebook? And you're not talking to us about it. That's sort of not courteous, and you're not doing yourself a good service here. You know.
So, and I guess, Mike, not trying to get back a little bit on topic, I guess you could say, I guess what we're asking is we just need to clean up our contracts and clarify what we want to see. If we're gonna give you $1, we want something to show where that.
Well, I mean, I can pretty quickly tell you, you know, sort of standard provisions that ought to be in all contracts with nonprofits for otherwise government services, but you need more than that, it sounds like.
Well, yes, I mean, I just trying to make everybody understand, I want them to be uniform. We don't need to pick and choose who we're gonna ask of what.
Right.
Then the ones we can. But I still got a little bit of heartburn, because I've always been a proponent of the chamber. You know, I share everything they put on Facebook, on social media, and everywhere else. But when I asked for their budget, they sent me back something I did not request and told me that should suffice. That's burned me
Well,
up.
there's probably a reason that all of the cases and AG opinions about gratuities clauses with nonprofits involved, most of them, or a lot of them, involve the Chamber of Commerce. Everybody wants to be nice to the Chamber of Commerce, and that's why there are all these numerous cases and AG opinions where judges and the AGs have said, they're private nonprofit. You can't make donations to them, any more than you can to the Red Cross or Denny's Church.
So
I just want something.
But
is there provision, I mean, is there provisions in most of these contracts that, I mean, from the standpoint of the county, that they've got to give you some financial information?
Should they?
You make that a requirement, and we could say that it should be in all of them, and it sounds like they're not. We haven't had that in there before.
So I think you got a grasp on what or looking?
Yeah, but I don't have the master list of contracts. You'll have to
Okay, that we
pull them and give me what the current contracts.
No worries.
With all this being said, Mike, is there some boilerplate base contract? I know we see a lot of that now. And then the fine tuning of it, or the individual services provided now, comes as exhibits that are attached to it. You know, example, I'm making the assumption that with the IDA, it's not gonna be a contract, it's gonna be an intergovernmental agreement with them. Right. With the chamber and with MOAS, the library and the volunteer fire departments, they would fall all under this base boilerplate agreement.
Right.
And then because DFACS and the Extension Office are both state agencies. Yeah, and the library, because those are state agencies, then they should have some
Right.
base contract that they provide to us.
Right, and DFACS and Cooperative Extension Service, they do, I think.
So does Department of Health.
Department of Health,
Health Department.
that's right, they do. The library is the struggle of those, and again, it's the most wild.
Well, there are issues that the regional library that are way above our pay grade.
Right.
So now we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8, excluding the IDA. So we need to provide you a list of contracts, and if we have a current document.
Right.
And that being the key verbiage here, a current document in place, not
That's
something that was signed 20 years ago and we just been rolling it over.
Well, 20 years, I mean, the current one could be 20 years ago because many of them begin to meet so you can't bind successor boards. So they all should have provisions in them, and the ones I've done have provisions in them that say they automatically renew at the end of each year unless the county takes affirmative action to terminate them by giving 30 days notice or 45 or whatever was negotiated with that group. So,
And
some of those have
that's
probably
what
been rolling over for 20 years.
Yeah, and that what you just said would become part of the boilerplate agreement.
Yes, sir. It is part of the boilerplate. That's right.
Just for the record, there's a lot more, Dennis. There's Northeast Georgia Regional Commission.
Don't we have several behavioral health too?
Yeah, yes.
That's what
Action and the other one up here. So you got Action, May Courts, Northeast Georgia Regional Commission, May Courts deal. I've tried to get us as far out of that deal as I can. I don't attend those meetings, and I told them real clear why.
Well, even our arrangements with the Public Defender's Office, juvenile prosecutors,
all those
are not direct budget. They're not accountable to us in the sense that they have to come in here and defend their budget.
Right. So all of those are unique. So let me start with
DA's office.
Public Defender and DA. So, to be honest, I haven't seen anything with the district attorney since decades ago when they wanted the county to supply them a clerical employee who, if I remember correctly, in the contract would remain the county's employee, but be assigned to work there at the DA's office. I understand it's way beyond that now.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I ever saw.
Wow. So, yeah, they even have security detail, which is, and I won't pick on his name, I won't even call his name, but he worked for Michael for years and everybody else down through the years, but now he's solely at the DA's office.
Mm-hmm.
And they pay back to the sheriff's office for his services, in which we pay for his services this way. So we give it to them so they can pay mine.
But there's another layer when you involve constitutional officers, and let's just leave that one alone for a second. The Public Defender's Office has stayed more on our radar year to year for various reasons. So that one that's another one that's sort of like a state agency, because in 2004, I believe it was, the state finally started chipping in to fund independent defense. The state appoints chief public defenders for each circuit, who then have an office and a staff, including, other attorneys. The state does not fund nearly the level of caseloads the ABA recommends, but nobody funds it to that. They would just all die or go home if we didn't supplement it to some extent. So everybody does. We had a good model for that, actually, in the Northern Circuit. Tell me more than you want to know, but it's interesting to me, probably not you. The Northern Circuit, this goes back to probably maybe the 80s, the 90s anyway, got together and said, we'll save money by jointly defending a public defender's office rather than trying to just, otherwise you just have judges appointing some local lawyer and they do. That segued very easily into the state system. Our contracts with them are provided. They're sort of like the health department and those other state agencies. They come through the Public Defenders Council. They all have to be identical, and they're fine. All 5 of us county attorneys have been looking at those for 20 years now. They're the same year to year. It's just amounts that you're determining there.
So the public defender is a lot like the juvenile justice court system.
Yes, sir. That's very simple. You're supplementing something that's otherwise a state.
And we know this year there's going to be a dramatic increase this year because, like the public defender's office, the state has pulled back the funding. They're making counties make up the pullback difference, and the the juvenile court judge, because of the prosecutors, they're having to add because the caseload is so high. And we're probably looking at $100,000 for 5 counties that's going to be divided 5 ways.
So I actually have not seen a circuit 5 county contract for juvenile court, but it's coming.
It's coming.
Okay.
It's coming. We had one last year. We all bucked it. Everybody but Hart County and Elbert County, because they pay the least. But the rest of us, Franklin and Madison and Overfoot, bucked it, and they found $95,000 to get it through one more year, and it cost us $5,000 divided by 5. But we know this year that it's completely gone away. The pool of money's gone, and I'm also expecting from the Superior Court side, there's going to be an increase of funding because they're giving judges raises. Malcolm is retiring, and he's already made his comment that he is leaving large sums of money for the remaining judges.
So I don't know what that means.
Yeah. He's basically going to give them a raise that we got to supplement somehow. I guess among 5 counties.
Give who a raise? The staff?
The staff.
Okay. All I know about county involvement in Superior Court is that we do pay a judicial supplement, salary supplement to the judges.
I think that's what he's going to increase.
I don't know about if there is any funding other than that. I don't know. Don't know what it is.
So it'll blow your mind when you get to see some of the numbers that we run.
I guess, get back to that. But I guess, Mike, if we reviewed those and then we come up with whatever, like we were talking about that boilerplate document or, whatever, or customized or whatever, we get those, then it says that this is, in that it will say this is sort of the requirement of what we want to see as far as a budget or whatever.
I think you can probably do that with the nonprofits, but again, we've talked about a lot of others here that are going to have their own requirements.
Right. So if we get them all to if we could get them to that thing, then we could have a process that we say, okay, we want all of them to come before us and talk in that, and that have a requirement that they should have this when they appear, or haven't sent that in.
That should be a predecessor to their budget request.
Yes, that's right. So it should be a process. It just happens every year instead of going through and having 14 times, we have to bring them back and ask them questions. This ought to be, say, this is what you need to bring with us. And this is, if you got a proposal and you want to ask for money, okay, tell us, okay, and why? Why is it gonna be more than it was the last time? And bring your figures with us to show it.
We'll do that.
Alright.
If there's any specific things in those contracts that we need, that is not written in the contract, we can have that identified.
I will caution before you move on, because I know you want to move on, and I know we need to move on. One of the reasons we're probably gonna get hit harder this year than any other year, even in the past, and probably a constant for future, is everybody that used their state supplements, their federal grant monies to go out and hire employees is trying to retain the employees that they hired.
Yep.
That's gonna become a new constant, unlike,
We'll have to tell.
I'm trying to figure out a good way to say this. They didn't do a very good job with allocating their money, because if you go out and hire 10 new people, when money runs out, you gotta do something with those 10 people, and they ain't planning on letting them go.
Well, that is an excellent point. And I have seen so many reasons that funding has been kicked from federal and state levels to county over my 24 years here. And that's a good point. That's gonna be the newest one.
It's just, yeah. But there's a huge thing for teachers. It's been all over world news and everywhere else. They're now saying, what are we gonna do to fill these positions? Because you hired us all, and now your money's run out, now you're gonna fire us all.
Well, everybody's lawyers and accountants told them, don't use your ARPA funds to create new positions, because then you're gonna have to fire those people, and nobody listens to them.
Just so you know, we did not.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So the next item is,
To help though, I guess in my mind, triage a little bit. The most pending things that we probably can affect are like the nonprofit. So we need to look at those. What do we have today? What changes, revisions, edits that needs to be done? And then what other obligations we may or may not have. I mean, because like we own the property, so we just,
Yeah.
what other things should be incumbent?
That's like property ownership's gonna be a variable, and there'll be other variables.
Yeah, those other variables that you're talking about, and then what we might need to do in regards to, whether it's, and I'll say it for here, just for budget purposes to keep moving, we got numbers from last year we can plug in just as a placeholder. And then we have that budget for the remainder of the calendar year, and so if we triage these and not just try to give you 40 things at one time.
That was great, that's a good idea.
And then,
I appreciate that.
And then we can address that, get them to them, and then make those comments like, we need this, we are doing this. If we don't have this information in the contract signed by December 31st, I don't know, the board may pull you by. I mean, I don't want to be threatening, but we need to articulate it in a manner. What I'm saying is, things that we can control a little easier versus sending the AG a note saying, we want to update your public defender contract, call me, and then get focused on something that might take more time.
Well, it's gonna be a process, that's what I'm visioning that with. I mean, Mike, I know you can't do all of them at one time, I mean, that's for sure.
Well, it was not, I wanted to clearly tell you, I wasn't looking for you to have them all done. We'd already really done like what Derek said. We sort of got our baselines,
Okay.
but it is something that we do need clarification to clear up probably over the next 6 to 12 months.
Because we're talking, for example, we also talked about, I've been as guilty as anybody, but we've been saying, okay, we want to tell the library what they can and can't do their money. So last night, we approved the Travis, there's a line in that thing, if y'all read it, it said, that money they get to spend it. I mean, they don't have to call us back and tell us what they're doing with it. So, from an equitable standpoint, I don't know if it legally it's required, or it's just we're sitting up here talking about, making things equal across the board, at least from an operational standpoint. We at least need to kind of know that too.
But if we have a situation like the bar and initiation and conversation regarding MOAS, that we own the property, they own the building, and we're told, no, you can't do that. If that's the verbiage that's in the original contract, we need to correct that at this point. And the reason I say that is so that somewhere down the road, another sitting board doesn't run into a situation where we have a debate about whether the Danielsville Fire Department owns the building and we own the land and we want to give it to them.
Right.
You know, let's clean some of this stuff up and.
Fortunately, I don't think we have that problem in any fire departments, do we, Brian?
Not now.
Not now.
Well, I think we got.
I think
But
that
what I'm
Moab
saying
contract,
is,
yeah.
we have the potential for the same situation there. If initially it was set up where the county retains the property, but they own the building, and you tell us you can't do that.
I don't think it actually says that. I think what it says is the county designated an area for MOAS to build a building, but it does not reference who owns the building. It just says MOAS is allowed to build the building, and they must maintain.
And it has some provision about if we terminate the contract to take the land back, and that's the part that, so they accepted me telling them you can't have this split ownership. The alternative was this payback provision, which again, I told them I don't know how enforceable that is. The county may not pay you this money when they terminate that contract, but that's your risk.
Well, hopefully, the other thing too, we need to be clear on, it is a nonprofit, and, you know, and they may, and somebody threw something $900,000, so, you know, if they have that clock in the bank. But truly, we don't want to get too far in the weeds, but we need to understand the difference between, is that like cash that's actually readily available, or is that some endowment that some old lady left?
No.
I'm using that as an example, you know, to say this is what's available and you can only use 10% of the year. I mean, help us understand.
Well, that was easy. The county would never give an organization an endowment.
Oh, no, I'm not saying the county would. I'm just saying, like, Aunt Sally died, she loved cats.
Right.
She gave MOAS a nonprofit
Right.
money for an endowment, and a non-educated person knows that there's $1 million, and they just, oh, we got $1 million, and then that starts the whole, well, why does the county give them money if they got $1 million? Well, they're not really, they don't really have $1 million, they get $10,000 every year.
From the county standpoint, we could try to enforce that provision of them giving us their complete financials, and that would be in there.
Well, an extension of that would be our relationship with the food bank.
Yeah.
Because here again, and we just have a situation over there, while I think they're doing a great service to the county, let me make that very clear. But, you know, they came up and needed a freezer, and in a roundabout way, they approached the county about it, but they're sitting on monies to go buy a freezer.
I know so little about the food bank, it terrifies me every time I hear it.
Well, you know, but here again, we should have some agreement in place. If we're gonna provide the food bank with a facility to use, not the interior furnishings and all like that, but if we're gonna provide them with a building, which we've done for a number of years, then there ought to be some agreement somewhere.
Well, here, let me stop you there. Here's my recent experience. I got an email from Tracy Dake, your HR director, asking me if somebody over there needed some sort of state food handling license, to which I said, why are you asking me? They're a separate organization. I asked, are they part of the North Georgia Food Bank?
No.
I was told no. I was further told, I can show you the email, they're now a county department. That's all I know.
Well, they are paid by the county, they are insured by the county. We do the medical, the health, the benefits, the employees are county employees over there.
So I guess it somehow became a county department.
I don't know, it was that way when I got here. I do know.
It was not that way when I got here, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so, as of right now, all employees are county employees, whether they're part-time or full-time. Some receive benefits, some do not, because they're mostly part-time. The building is ours. It was deeded to us by the forestry division. We have made additions to the building. The freezer, actually, they're paying for that out of the food bank's funds. We're not paying for that. We only give them $6,000 a year from the board.
So when people make donations to the food bank, that's now like making donations to the rec department. It's part of the county's funds.
Well,
in our audit. And if it's not, how the hell are you getting away with that?
I don't know that. That's my question. There's two checkbooks. And I signed the checks for them to go out and make food purchases. I don't know who audits that. I just don't, just to be honest. Am I correct with Christina in that statement?
I don't know the answer to that.
All right. We'll get back with you.
I got nothing to add.
No, I'm trying to update you.
We got a lot of work to do in this area, obviously.
And it's bad, I mean, because it puts us in a position, and or Christina, into a phone call, regularly that says, how do you do this, when you do that, and we're, you read it, and you're like, uh-oh. And those happen every day. Those are those hand grenades we talked about 1 month into this.
Yeah.
So, all right, Christina, I know we need to move on.
So the next item is reinstating economic development. I think we all know where we're at in that process, but again, this agenda started 3 months ago. So I have you some agenda item reports, and it kind of just goes over our partnership with Carl Vinson. This started last October. The board put together a small committee. They had a few meetings with Carl Vinson to determine the direction we wanted to go. All of this started with a study committee that the board put together. This was one of their tasks that they had. So we've come to the end, and we have a economic development strategic plan. We've got that finalized. I sent that to you guys. I think it was either yesterday or the end of last week, maybe yesterday. A 2-year action plan and a job description. All that is going to be turned over to the IDA. That economic developer will be an IDA employee, and this kind of helps set some groundwork and parameters for them to reinstate or recreate economic development for us. So I don't think there's much discussion on that unless the board has anything.
So does all that address how the IDBA becomes part of this?
Yeah, those documents,
Okay.
all that. We had meetings with this
Okay.
board with the IDA and Carl Vinson.
Okay, I wasn't part of that.
And just so I know, and I think I know the answer to this, the IDBA will hire the economic developer. Will the BOC, as a group or small committee, interview that person also, or how? I guess what I want to avoid, I want to avoid another situation where the IDBA may create a compensation package that exceeds what the other county employees get.
This board will not have no say so over that hiring process, that
Yeah,
compensation
that was rolled out in
package.
a couple of the early meetings, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it?
This
So,
was a conversation we had with Ben where he said he was going to reach out to the company, a hiring firm that Gene said that they use.
No wonder I felt so uninformed yesterday afternoon. I didn't know any of this.
Yeah, these were, I think these were some of the meetings that you asked if you need to come to or not. But I don't think that's why you were
the
there.
University of Georgia put them together, but, I'm not gonna touch on that personally, just because I think we're nowhere near where we need to be. Too many unanswered questions at this point.
Well,
At least in that one position.
I think that where we're at is where the both boards come to in those meetings. Now, if this board doesn't like where we're at, then we need to set up another meeting and have Carl Vinson come back with the IDA board and come back. But the documents I sent are the final documents. That's what the groups both decided. That's how this will be set. This is the 2-year plan. They are the roles and responsibilities and who is over what. Now, all that is defined.
So then you're talking about this 2-page meeting notes, is that where it is?
I don't remember what email it was in. It's got economic development. There's 2 or 3
That sounds
attachments.
about right.
There's 3 attachments. One of them is 5 pages. economic development director action plan, first 2 years,
Yeah.
first
Yeah,
90
that's-
days,
yeah.
first 60
That's
months.
the expectations for the person who fills that position.
Got
Jobs.
little phrases that start with orient and expand and collaborate and learn about. That's not real helpful.
I know I didn't attend the last meeting because I couldn't or whatever, I was sick. But I guess that the BOC had no, as far as the hiring the person, I thought, because we sort of talked about determining the criteria for hiring that person, so who is appointed by us, the IBDA folks are.
Yes, the board is.
The board is. So right now, we have 3 people, right?
4.
Well,
Huh?
Yes, there's.
The chairman's always the 5th member.
Oh, so then it's chair.
There's
So
no vacancy.
we have somebody from the BOC there, it's just the chairman.
He only gets a vote in case of a tie, so.
I would love to let somebody else have that.
No, I'm not asking for it, but I didn't realize that so, do you remember why that was done that way? Is it because there's a different organization or why?
What, the chairman in case of a tie?
No, I'm talking about why there was no other expanded for anyone else to
Be involved in the hiring.
involved with the hiring.
It came in the early meetings that was held at Jackson MC. People in the room. We had a bunch of people in the room that had no authority to sit on any board other than, anything I say is gonna sound bad because.
No, I think it was
I don't need to.
discussed multiple times. It was discussed with the committee that was put together, and then it was discussed with both boards when they were together. And the original thought process was if that economic developer, because that's what the IDBA's role is economic development, that they would report to them, and it would almost take that political BOC role out of it, that the BOC is over the IDBA board. And so you could structure it 2 ways, and Carl Vinson explained this. You can structure economic development to be an employee that works for the IDBA, or you can create a county department that's economic development, and they report
Yeah.
directly to the
So
BOC.
since we were doing it that way, okay. All right,
They did not.
I sort of understand it.
And that portion of the way they operate would be, in essence, the same way it's being operated now. They have just lost their focus of being economic development. They hired their own director, they hired that, and they did their operating, and we just appointed those board members. So really, the only change we're looking at there is, we're just separating from them the water department. Everything else.
Right.
So maybe we need to have a meeting to sit down and everyone go over what the new expectations are.
Right. Well, and I was good, the expectations, I was in those meetings, and so who they hire, as far as the expectations, I think are pretty good, so that clarifies that for me. Now, don't we have one more person that we're supposed to have on the board, right?
Yeah, we got an opening. Mike, I want to ask you a question, and I'm trying to make this as best as I can here, because you've been here 20 years. Does this not feel, smell, touch, and taste like 20 years ago? Other than the fact that we have a little structure of what we want, it looks exactly like how we started 20 years ago. I know we're laying it out a little bit different, and we're putting things, some steps together we want to see. But if I'm hiring a guy or a girl to run my company, I would at least want to know how my company runs to do the interview process, not just any jackleg that sits in the room. The things I can sit in on this interview and know what questions to ask, what qualifications to ask. You need to be a professional in that position.
So,
If I'm a lawyer, going to hire a lawyer to work under my firm, I'm going to be a lawyer so I know what questions to ask you. I don't want to be the guy standing on the street corner, with the yoga sign saying, I'm looking for a lawyer. But, and I'm not trying to degrade anybody when I say that, but I think you need to be in the same mindset as the person you're hiring. A committee is good to get established rules, but somebody got to have the say-so over it. It needs to come from the Board of Commissioners that fund that.
As I said last night, when I came here, the IDBA was close to the fund, but they were still, so their membership, I remember they had somebody from Georgia Power, somebody from Jackson EMC, can't remember anybody else, but they had business leaders or people from economic, power companies are often involved in economic development, so that's appropriate. But it had become sort of defunct. They weren't really doing they didn't have any employees. So then it totally quit being economic development and became a water department. So now I think your IDBA board is composed of people who are focused on water, although that doesn't mean that they can't focus on it. I mean, you have our local Jackson EMC person.
That's a genius.
Yeah. So, you still have some of that on the board, but it's a sea change to say you're no longer in the water business and now you're back in the economic development business.
Well,
There's nobody on that board now has ever understood, ever been involved in that as an IDBA member.
but if you take us in the BOC, we're not either.
But
So,
I think what this board is gonna see is there's a lot of transition that the county is in on a lot of levels. Even when you talk about CPL, you wanna give so much authority, like CPL just said in our last meeting, back to the appropriate staff. You hire the appropriate people, put the appropriate people in place. You this board sets their policy, and they hire people to take care of it and run the county in the direction you want it to go in. That has not been the case of this county. So this BOC board has been hands and elbows deep in every action that's taken. So then we get caught up in this, I don't want to say argumentative conversation, but we've got all these different points of view that this is the hard step. You hire that economic developer that's qualified to do that. The BOC has the final say, so because you appoint the IDBA members, if you don't like it, you pull your appointment.
Can I answer Todd's question before we go on? Because that was my prelude to it. Here's my fear of how it's set on. I'm being very candid, is that for it to work that way, there's going to have to be tremendous cooperation between the IDBA and this economic person who works for them and the chairman and the board of commissioners over here.
yeah.
In my time here, up until I became the attorney for the IDBA, because I set a condition on doing that, the IDBA was seen as somewhat of an independent power structure that could fight with the Board of Commissioners. When they were out of a lawyer and John Scarborough asked me to do it, I said I can only do it if the IDBA understands and accepts that they are appointed by the BOC, they serve at the pleasure of the BOC, and thus there could never be a conflict between the IDBA and the BOC, because the BOC can remove that conflict very easily by dismissing you and appointing new members. That's the dynamic we have to be aware of as you go into that structure.
But the Vincent Institute, Carl Vincent Institute, now, are they helping with us with the process of hiring, not determining the person? They're not involved with it at all.
No.
So we don't have any third party that's like, that is gonna.
Ben and Dean have talked about a third party that I think Jackson EMC uses that helps vet.
There's a headhunter out there
Yeah.
looking for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, I think we drifted off from what my original question was. Does the IDA have the authority to set salary and provide benefits that exceed what the county provides? And the reason I ask that is we've got a situation now, as we assume the water department, where we've got people that potentially are going to be disgruntled because their retirement's going to change. And that's the corporate world.
Well, I'm not so much worried about that now that, I mean, Todd's there, and Todd doesn't get a vote, but Todd gets input in this. And so they got to, as you said, for this thing to work, it's going to have to be tied together, and we're all going to have to communicate and work together. I mean, and it's got to happen, or it's just
The one
no
caveat
board,
that
but I
fell
think
off-
it's going to be fine.
Yeah, the wheel fell off when the IDBA board chose not to follow county policy. It don't matter who they
That's right.
come back to for approval of, but as long as they're employees that we pay insurance on, they need to follow our HR policies.
They have yet to adopt a personnel policy. So far as I've been able to determine, they never had one.
Never had one.
I was told verbally when I asked, we follow the county's personnel policy. I asked for written documentation in the minutes, told there are none. I asked, which do you follow all parts of it? And when I pointed out specific parts, they said, well, no, we don't follow that. That's kind of where it is.
Yeah. So, but it could, Dennis, to answer your question directly, if this board, we don't have to run their day-to-day operation.
No,
But we can institute, if that is going to be a separate entity, but yet fall under the county umbrella for insurance or so forth and so on, that it could follow our HR as long as we write that policy to say such.
You could certainly require, again, just because you have the power of dismissal and appointment, you could require them to follow personnel policy. I don't know if you can, since if they're going to be a separate employer, I don't know if you can offer them the same, bring them under your retirement and health insurance and those sorts of things. Those are going to be determined by your plan providers.
Your actual economic development could be a contract.
And that was
It
what
could be a
was
contract service.
suggested.
Could be a 1099 employee with no benefits.
100%. It could be. And then all you have to worry about is having the board be similar to the P&Z board as an advisement board back to the BOC.
True.
I mean, you can make it as simple as you want to, but right now I think we've got it really complicated.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid of. And I want it to be simple because I want the next board or the next chairman to be able to make this thing work.
All right, so we got a little bit more work to do. So the next item is future employment positions, and there's a few of these. One of the things, and Brian brought it up earlier, is leisure services director. We've been trying to hire a senior center director, and we've just not had a lot of luck. We did hire a lady, and that didn't go as planned. Then the rec department, their structure has shifted and changed. I know we have SPG, they actually have a meeting tonight, they're doing a master plan for leisure services for all of the facilities that the rec department has. So does the board, and I think that SPG is leaning towards that leisure services, if we haven't seen that structure yet, if they're going to recommend a director over both. But is that something that the board, do you want to go ahead and be more proactive on hiring a senior center director, department head today, or do we want to go at the same pace we're going and wait for SPG to come back and say that they recommend a leisure services director over both?
Well, I guess my little personal thing is I'd rather we wait and do that myself.
I don't, at this point, I don't think we're 2 or 3 months out from getting that.
That's right. SPG is close to completion. That's supposed to be in October.
Mm-hmm.
There is a meeting tonight at 7:30, public meeting. I concur with everybody on that one. I think we need to wait, see the findings, then make a move based off those findings.
Well, one good thing about it is all the senior citizen members up there, the senior center members, got involved with SPG as far as their survey and stuff like that. A lot of them have been to the meeting, so they've been part of that too, so.
That may help us.
That may help us, that's what I'm hoping it is.
The next one is a county planner or planning and zoning department head. That position has also been vacant for several months. Right now, the chairman is the department head for that department, building and code enforcement and animal control. And that's the next one on the list is code enforcement and animal control. What direction does the board want to go in? Since we have budgets coming up, are we wanting a budget for that department head for next year? We have not been searching for a department head for those department, since it was so many put together, do we want to separate that out and hire for those positions? Do we want to use CPL to specifically review all the rezones coming in? So that's one part of the question is the planning and zoning. The second part is building inspection, code enforcement, and animal control. We talk to those departments regularly. They're all in the same 2 offices together. They work well together. Me and Todd have talked about, do we want to appoint maybe a supervisor over animal control, and then you've got the chief building inspector, Eddie, over building. Do we want to kind of tier those departments out? Because right now they're all sitting pretty equal. But the way I explained it to Todd is we have no one point of contact down there just for staffing relations. Is paperwork being filed correctly? Is everybody, their attitudes with the public, is that being followed through correctly instead of it turning into like a tattletale system? We have no chain of command when it comes to, 6, 7, 8 staff members.
So as of right now, this is my personal opinion, as far as the planning and zoning department, is to continue it as the course we're on, let CPL finish, take their findings after they finish, and then us make a better organized decision based off those findings, because for me, it's a little premature to hire somebody and throw him into what we've already got until we get some structure for the guy to work from or girl to work from. Code enforcement, again, Christina's 100% correct. It's not necessarily the code enforcement. Right now, if you go into any office down there, animal control, building inspection, and or permitting, everybody's getting along. If the workflow is very good, they like not having somebody micromanage them. But code enforcement, Eddie is the lead person because he's got 20 years experience versus the next guy with 2 or 3, but animal control does not. Both of those guys are equal. We do need to separate those a little bit so we have a point of contact. And I think what me and Christina talked about the other day was, I don't know so much about maybe making one a supervisor or, making one a supervisor, but leaving the word administrator out of it, because at some point when you put that administrator word onto a title, some of them get a little different thought process down there, or at least that's where it's happened in the past. So if it was up to me, I would like to at least take one of the code enforcement guys and move him into a more of a, not necessarily a supervisor role, but a point person role to speak for both parties. It's just my thoughts.
Call them team lead.
Well, I mean, you have those 3 departments, they're filling out reports that go into magistrate court.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, if you.
So, you just want that, you want someone in those checks and balances making sure that they're filling their reports out correctly, that they're going to court prepared,
and being able to hold them accountable when they don't.
Well, and if you don't have to call them supervisor, you can even call them like team lead person, because that's what they do in industry. Yeah.
So those,
whatever you're gonna call them, each one of these departments, it sounds like, are we modifying or do we even have an organizational chart for it, or is it just, we need to create one and take names off of it and create the positions we want and put people where they need to be?
Yeah.
So the question in my mind as we address this is how intertwined these are. Like, I can pretty easy to take animal control out of the picture and do something with it. Planning and zoning and building inspection and code enforcement are all so closely tied together. They're sort of hand in glove there. Or in my mind would be more effective if they operated, would be the most effective if they operated that way. So,
yeah,
but again, because of the way we have operated, if you bring it up ahead overall, then you're going to create resentment.
Well, the issue about it is animal control works with code enforcement very well, but on the right side of code enforcement, they work with building inspection very well. And on the right side of building inspection is planning and zoning. So they're all interconnected. And, those 3 departments the way they operate now works. That's not to say that the department won't grow, that it won't become an issue, it won't be in function, like, so we need to put something in place for that.
Well, right there, go ahead, Tim.
Well, for me, in my experience in dealing with different municipalities and authorities having jurisdiction, zoning and planning really has nothing to do with building inspection and code enforcement. You know, I don't personally know of a jurisdiction where the two, a jurisdiction that's beyond being a one or two person department, where they're not separate entities, because zoning and planning's function, if they do what zoning and planning is supposed to be doing, is there's a huge gap there between code enforcement, building inspections, animal control. I mean, zoning and planning essentially is an administrative body over here that takes what's going to be in black and white from CPL and makes sure that all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and the boxes are checked. And then it's supposed to come to us. And they won't ever see a business, a building, a house that's built. That's not what they do. They won't ever go to a site to look at it, really. They're going to look at a piece of paper. And they're going to say, this is in compliance, and it's not going to be, well, I'll take care of this because I know it's granted. You know, and I do think that in regards to code enforcement, animal control, and that, and building inspections, we do need some tiered system, whether it's building inspection 1, 2, animal control person 1, 2, and code enforcement if we have 1 and 2.
It's very similar now in the building inspection, because we do have a code officer 4 and we have a code officer 2. It's basically because of the requirement in the licensing that they carry. So that's pretty well defined. Animal control is not necessarily the one it is, and I'm completely okay with just going there and say, from now on, you're my point person.
You know, the problem with that, to me, doing that's fine, because that's like an administrative thing that you would, that's y'all's Billy White, y'all are in this Billy.
I do agree, zoning and building inspection and code enforcement is black and white. They're not remote.
They're not what?
They do not fall with each other. The building inspection and zoning.
I mean, in Elko County, they have it all under one person.
They have it all under one. They may have a lot bigger staff than we got.
And they do have it, and that may be why it works that way.
Yeah, because zoning should be one thing. It should happen prior to any.
But zoning is not black and white.
Oh, no.
Okay, this is the email we sort of had this afternoon about one of the upcoming rezones and should there be conditions, and my explanation is what I have seen, that needs to take place at the application process where you have whether it's a third-party contractor or an in-house employee, somebody that has the capability to work with the applicants to present something that, you know, a rezone resolution with appropriate conditions, that the BOC then has confidence in that director. Sorry, I'll shut up.
No, you're right. You're right.
That's exactly what, I mean, for me personally, that's what, whether it's right or wrong, we need to hear it.
Because we're taking applications.
Well, in too many applications, stipulations or requirements or addendums were added in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And for better or worse, you negated part of the process doing that. If we're gonna do that, if at the end of the day, it's gonna happen right here between that podium and this, then we don't need a zoning and planning committee.
Well, you got a reason for that. So, and Mike will tell you, because you have no authority, the planning and zoning director, administrator, or anybody else can't place those conditions because we don't have policies written by the water department that states if you're within 1,000 feet of a water line, you've got to hook that water line. So when you take that open application for a subdivision, they can say, oh, by the way, I understand you're applying for this, but you do know you have to connect to this, that, and the other. Right now, we're having to conditional because we don't have a policy that requires it.
One of many.
One of many, but I'm just saying, that's why that
Good example.
only comes from an open application of, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is why this board has to do it. Go ahead, Derek.
But we're spending a lot of, and I'm saying it's worth it, and it's good, you know. We're updating stuff. We are on a path to try to, you know, and I want to say what everybody in this county says, supposedly, you know, maybe except for a few real estate agents. You know, we like what we got, we want to preserve what we got. Okay. We're trying to write policies that are semi-pro growth, that can handle that in certain areas, and then really preserve the other areas. Planning and zoning, building code enforcement, to me, they're collaborative departments. You can't just have one without the other, because there is interpretation. You know, what does this zoning buffer mean? Unplanned. I mean, what, you know, unless you're going to define everything and never deviate it, there's going to be interpretation. So they're going to have to be collaborative. But at the end of the day, I don't see, going back to the original question about a planning and zoning director, I want somebody under our umbrella that's full task is to advise us on the best approach, what those applications look like, recommendations, and can come sit at that podium and say, here's my report, and say, this is what I think, based on what we've talked to, this is the suggestions that we made, whatnot. I don't think you can hire that out, because I don't think you get that buy-in as a personal, I mean, I can always go hire somebody who's got an electrical license and say, inspect that, does it match code or not? So, I mean, those are kind of, but that zoning director, and we're going to have to pay for them. I mean, some people think it's probably going to get hurt sooner or later, because we're going to have to start paying people for the task that we're asking them to do. And it's not going to be cheap. But we need to put that person in place, empower them, say, this is the policy that we've adopted, and if there's missing policies, start making recommendations to make those updates with your collaborative departments, the water, utility department, I'm sorry, you know, or other departments, and how that works out, you know, road department. I mean, they're all collaborative, so we need somebody that's going to look out for our best interest and start saying, so when somebody comes in, again, it's not, what, we got 3 or 4 departments right now coming up to the top of the hill, and, you know, that door shouldn't get knocked on. I mean, I know it will, but we need to be able to say, what does that person, what does staff recommend, what is the policy? You know, what's the deviations of the policy that we may want to either agree or disagree on? So I think that position is critical if we want to push and enforce and desire what we've been doing with the comp plan, where we're going with the ordinance rewrite, and where we want to end up. Because it's to me, it's foundational. If not, if it's going to be a crapshoot, then, you know, we'll just have everybody come up here and say, I want to do this, and we tell them yes or no right here, and be done with it.
So, and I'm going to disagree with you on any of that, because I like the theory behind it. Added the caveat with that, though, I would add a caveat, would be, so are you saying once you get that person that can do that presentation, are you going to need a P&Z board?
Well, I'm hoping that's part of what CPL's recommendation, that's one of the things we, you know, that I would like to hear from them is the way we're doing it currently the best way, or is there a better mechanism? And one of the things that we have discussed is changing the structure of, even to the point of completely eliminating the role of the P&Z commission.
I would like to hear, I'm sorry, Derek, go ahead.
I would say, one of the things I think, I think the P&Z role needs to probably be adjusted in, you know, not us getting a form that's just got 6 check boxes on it, so these were, you know, but I think from a staff report, and I think it does, I think it serves us well, that if it goes through that process, then we can also have, buffer may be the wrong word, but a citizen kind of review of or as a citizen volunteer, does what staff's telling us make sense in regard to
get to comment on this. There's a component of this that has been sorely missed in my mind for a while. There is not that professional person in that department telling the P&Z members, here are the things that you should consider. Based on this request, we're going to look at section 7.1.3, and you need to look at 8.3. These are the things you need to consider, because everything that gets addressed by the P&Z is just a, do I think we should, or do I think we shouldn't?
Yeah.
Based on.
Opinion based.
Yeah, pure opinion, but there's nobody, and for the P&Z members just like us, is it my job to become, and essentially we put ourselves in a position, each of us has to become experts in the planning, in our zoning ordinance, because nobody's getting that information. Nobody's being told, all right, you need to be considering, this is a poultry house request, you need to look at it. Setbacks, you need to look at it. All these things, but everybody's just wandering around blind, and it's just all just, I think we should, or I think we should.
That's a good way to put it. Mike makes it very clear. He's not a planner, he's an attorney. But we point the finger at him and just ask him, we have more questions than answers at every meeting.
Yeah.
You know?
And so that begs the question, if I can jump in, so y'all each made a point, I'd like to jump in. So, start first with, bringing, what does the planning director bring to the Planning and Zoning Commission and ultimately then to the BOC? What I was thinking about and have seen work well is when the planning director doesn't just tell P&Z what to think about, but has a recommendation.
Yeah.
And then if there is a planning commission.
Recommendation
based on these things. And then planning commission and then BOC may have questions about some of those.
Mm-hmm.
Planning commission may serve a function at, if there are changes that the planning director needs to make, hopefully they can do it there so you're not making those changes here. The other point I was going to make is I'm also interested in what CPL says about the planning commission's role, because at least in the larger places, planning commissions primarily functioned to make some lower level decisions without them having to go to the board of commissioners. The law that became effective July 1 last year, which is why we had to take variance authority away from our planning director, basically said all of those are at least appealable to the BOC, and so a lot of counties are struggling with what is the role of the planning commission now that new law has taken effect.
Well, at a minimum, Mike, and I think you and I have talked about it a couple of times, at a minimum, we need to review and update the charter for the P&Z committee to get it.
Yeah, I mean,
Here again,
we don't even have one we're confident is the latest one that was passed.
Well, forgive me, but this is just another thing that, guys, I mean, we're all into our second or third year here, and we're still dealing with stuff that's 20 plus years old. And now, I hate to say it, but there was a time when it worked fine because the future wasn't coming. We were always going to be Madison County. Unfortunately, the future's here now.
Yeah, but I think, you have to decide what you want the planning commission to do, and then we'll rewrite the charter to reflect that.
Well, that should be one of the things that we could charge CPL.
And actually, charter is probably the wrong word, because that would just be you create their bylaws, their guiding principles, whatever. P&Z is not something that's dictated by state law. It's purely a county creation.
It's the way we decided to do it.
It's the way you design it.
Yeah, but we have a company that we could ask, what's the model that other people are doing?
Yeah.
And that's a line item in that contract that we charge them with an additional service and give them 60 days to put something in front of us. I'm sorry.
Touch on the last little bit of that I heard Derek stated, and I like what he's saying, but there was a contradicting statement, or at least I heard it that way. It's like, we don't want everything to be black and white. We don't want to hire a guy that'll just do black and white. But that's sort of what the attorney is. He's the guy in black and white. He's telling us what's in black and white. He's not giving us opinion. He said, you want to find somebody that was like us or represented us to keep our county the way it is. And you're not going to be able to find that guy. You're either going to get the guy that can follow whatever the ordinances is we got and make changes if need be, but you're not going to be able to find a guy that, did he just move here from Gwinnett County, or has he been here for 50 years?
Well, I can give you some personal experience with that, because one of my other jobs is city attorney for Bogart, which contracts with Oconee County to their planning department is Bogart Planning Department. So my interaction there is that either the head of that department or the planner under him that he's assigned to Bogart will occasionally call me on the close questions, or, how do you interpret this? Or is this condition defensible? Those sorts of things. So they're able to do everything that's, as we said in law school, they can handle everything between the borders. They call me to determine the borders.
The gray areas.
The gray areas. Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're doing currently. Granted, I don't want it.
Ain't nobody handling the conduct. The gray area starts in Kansas.
No, the gray area starts in the middle and goes both directions.
My point was, and I don't think it's contradictory, is whoever that technical person is that has the ability to understand that, being educated either by, through education and work experience, understands and can, again, pick up our comp plan, understand what we want, and have a conversation with what we want, and then apply that. And so, and then you also learn on the job, after a year or two, seeing how things in conversation, they may start absorbing some stuff, whether they lived here or they moved from somewhere else.
Gotcha.
They start absorbing kind of that notion of the policymakers and say, hey, this is what we're getting into. So when somebody comes in, again, not here's my application or rezone is, you need to sit down prior to an application being filed, you need to have an initial meeting with the planning and zoning director. And they come in, they say, we really want to put a gas station out at, next to Denny's house.
Yep.
And they look at it and go, don't even file it,
These are the ordinances.
because you are not even, you're not even in the book yet.
These are the ordinances.
Here's our book.
Context of the comprehensive plan.
People can still file it if they want to.
But just understand
but
that
they already
the
know.
answer's gonna be
But
no.
they already know they're gonna, and that's where the DOC has to back your planning director and make him have told the truth.
And they ain't running to see Christina and
Well,
Todd.
just so y'all know, this is what we've been doing.
Well, I understand that, but
I mean, talking about
what
that
we're
part,
saying is
right?
y'all shouldn't be doing it, though.
Yeah,
We should
no, I get
have
it.
a person that.
So we had one just recently come in and says, I want to build that right there, and I'm like, I can't tell you, no. All I can tell you is, I don't believe that the board's gonna do that.
Right.
But it's up to them to decide. If you wanna spend your $250, go right ahead, but
But you don't go.
that's a stretch.
That shouldn't be the answer. The answer should be based on what the comprehensive plan guides us to do.
Yeah.
I can't recommend that.
Yeah, that's right. I
Well,
can't,
and a step back from that, it should be
We can't
based on the
recommend.
dual factors and the other components of case law that dictate the limits of zoning. Here's where we need to be.
right, that's right.
Well, it needs to be someone
And that's not
also.
something, frankly, I think anybody sitting at this table can do.
That's right.
No,
But the
no.
person we need though needs to be able, and Derek touched on it, needs to be able to take our comprehensive plan, recognize that that is a fluid document. It is not made to be there for 19 more years and then we'll pull it down and send it out for review again. And one of the first tasks that this zoning and planning director, I believe, should be charged with is taking our comprehensive plan with the generalized maps that we have and sort it by parcel. Because that's gonna take a number of questions.
I think the planner would tell you that's not how it works. The comp plan is designed to be, it's a future, it's out there.
Yeah, just
So
where
where
those
those borders land is yet to be determined.
Yeah, but in our comp plan, we introduced language into our comp plan recently that's nowhere in the comp plan.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow that.
what did we call it,
Buffer zone.
buffer zones.
Right.
That's nowhere in that comp plan will you find that until a conversation took place in this room.
So
And
where
then
did
all of
that
a
come
sudden,
from?
we had a letter
The golf
from,
course.
we had a letter from the person who did the comp plan saying this fits into a buffer zone.
Oh, okay.
And we still haven't, to the best of my knowledge, in the 4 months that has taken place, and I've asked for it repeatedly, what is a buffer zone? Where is it at? How big is it? And does it, when you fill it up, do we have another buffer zone?
I don't know because I'm not a planner. I think a planner's answer would be buffer zones are an inherent part of implementing a comp plan. That's why those zones, that's why there aren't definite lines.
That's not zigzag.
It's not.
But here again,
They're not.
if it's not in black and white, it ain't.
So, but remember, having a comprehensive plan and implementing in good faith is one of the 14 Google factors that are taken into account by a court when analyzing whether a constitutional classification you've assigned to a tractor property is constitutional or not. It's an important one. It's probably more important than some of those other 14 in most cases. But again, a planner knows these things, and you know, I was, when y'all were going through some of these things over the last couple of years, I called the head of Oconee County, talked to him about it, and I just, at one point in the conversation, I said, you know, guy, I don't really know how you do that. He said, of course you don't. You're not a planner, you're a lawyer. And none of us are planners.
Well, yeah, I agree.
So back to
No, I
the
agree.
question there, to your point, how would you suggest, or what's your thought process on structuring? So we talk about county planner, is that different from the overseer of all of these, or what's your picture of what this would look like?
No, I think you have a planning and zoning department, and that's standalone.
And the planner is a component of that.
Yes.
So you have an employee, in addition to what's there, you have an employee that is the planner. So that department stands alone.
Well, the planner is going to be designated as your zoning administrator. That's going to be your head person of that department.
Now, what I fully expect is, you know, whether there's a door between them, or a cubicle, or a phone, or if they're in another building, to call the building, you know, building inspection and say, you know, what's on this piece of property? What's neighboring? You know, are there any permits that's been pulled that, you know, may render some decision? I mean, I think they're collaborative in all regards, but I think writing a recommendation is that independent person that has that ability and their staff to support that can give us a recommendation to say, this is it, you know, here's the, you know, whether the recommendations are the 14 Google factors, you know, I think I saw an email not too long ago, it's like zoning is legal until it's proven unlegal. I mean, that's a weird way to say that, but, you know, it's, whatever we decide that zoning is good until somebody can prove that there's something else. And there actually may be something in between. So just because somebody comes in and asks for X, Y, Z, that zoning director may say, I may agree with you that it is not A, but it's probably a MN, kind of in the middle versus all the way over here just because you're asking for it.
Or maybe the best thing is A with conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he would provide that as an informed opinion. He would come to us and present it that way.
And would present that recommendation, and what I've seen is the director comes to the meeting with 3 resolutions for every rezone on the agenda. A resolution to deny, a resolution to approve, and typically the one he's recommending is the resolution to approve with the conditions he's written.
Boy, wouldn't that make it so? It would, and then get it done at the early stages, and you'd avoid all that message.
My life is
And it would remove the politics of it.
Oh, I'm telling you, it made my life a hell of a lot.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because they don't need to be coming there, because y'all got bigger fish to fry than
We
with
kiss you
that.
every day. Every day.
That's it.
So, go ahead, Christina.
All right.
One thing I do want to keep in mind though, so I know we're talking about all these different things, and I'm not disagreeing that we don't need it, but just keep in mind that there's a dollar figure attached to everything.
Well, we had a discussion, this discussion just prior to us beginning budget discussions.
Yeah. Like, we can want and we can get there, we just gotta prioritize the finances to get there.
My question is too, is do we hire this person, do we wait till after we get some of the further zoning, or is that something that we might want to go ahead and just, are we looking for?
Well, we currently already put 100,000 for this planning director. It's already in this year's budget, or last year's budget.
But we're not, what I was saying is.
I'll leave it,
Yeah.
in case CPL gets done in time.
Right, but we're gonna, before we actually pull the trigger to start looking for that person, we're gonna wait until CPL does that.
I think that would be
We
wise.
have to look for that person the right way.
Yeah.
And American Planning Association, Georgia Planning Association, and they have job opening website, section on their websites. CPL could probably tell you how to go about that to some degree. You don't just put an ad in the paper.
And also to defend this too, I am a proponent that they can help us guide things in the future, but I also think it is probably one of the strongest ways to defend what we want to keep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
There you go.
All right, the next bulletin is county manager and administrator. The study committee that the board put together in the
Can
spring.
we have a restroom break before we start that one?
Sure.
I'm first.
You're first, sorry, this is where the ice cream comes in, sorry.
That was a hint to go get the ice cream.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's in the truck, right? We know you didn't come without it.
It's gonna be more like,
Hey, we have Lee here, we can always send him after this.
That's what he did, I told you, I mentioned it last time.
You can drive my truck.
I'll go get it.
Move the district forward this month.
I've already told him I'm taking his qualified.
Oh,
I got a Caterpillar background on the checkbook.
Mm-hmm.
Funny, this has been discussed, and it goes back to what we were talking about the other day, but all you all get coming up is how P and Z voted.
Yeah, this is what
You
you
don't
have to
know
go.
anything about the background of any of this. You don't have a staff recommendation, you don't have, it's like, no.
We used to, the planning chair, the planning department head was here at those meetings to make that part of the presentation. That's going to, it's not that it exists now, but that's going to.
But we're coming back for the plan.
Right, right. That would be an expectation.
Really, I like the idea of having the planner, and if they're well versed in our comp plan and our codes and all our ordinances and everything else, it shouldn't matter where they come from. And I would think hiring from outside the county would.
This is definitely gonna come from outside, I can
I mean, that would be the easiest way to take the politics, take local emotion and everything out of it, and just say, this is what it is.
That's
Thinking
why,
outsider has its advantages.
Yeah.
that's why I believe we should adopt, that even if we work through 2 or 3 drafts of the CPL program, we should adopt it and have it in place so the planner doesn't come in and decide it's time to reinvent the wheel. This is what you work with. Become versed in it, and
We're going to work on this for a couple of years, and if you see some opportunities, come talk to us.
because that's what we did with Chris. We turned him loose with the belief that he was the know-all in that, and we found after a year that we were making changes to things that we changed.
Yeah.
And I would think the planner would also need to work, I mean, they would definitely have to work with economic development person. we
Yeah.
hire, too.
Absolutely.
Would have to be like that buddy.
Good point.
Didn't we talk about in that last economic development meeting, housing that person is IDA office too?
The chamber.
Chamber.
I think Dan and Ann have had some conversations, about that.
Had some conversations.
Like having them on one floor and having the chamber on the other floor.
I talked to Ann also about potentially how to handle that clerical position if you want to have it for the IDBA. The likely demand for that is not really, the time demand, that's not really great. The chamber is already committed to adding another person, so why not just let that person, because that, in my mind, that person is going to be there to action the phone. Yes, the IDBA person is here, or he's not here, tell me what you're thinking, and I'll get the information to him, so the IDBA could potentially just pay the chamber part of that person's, so they'd be in a desk on the ground floor,
Making them to their contract for service.
And that would be good, and that would still be paying them for services and still supporting them also.
So then, and their budget would be helped by not having to have a full position.
Yeah.
Person.
Yeah. That would be helpful.
If they make that a full position, I think I may apply for that job, I'll catch you up on that.
They find something for you to do. If they would have that, if I had that, that would be, they want me to mow the lawn, something like that.
After about 3 days, I'd be looking for something.
That's why
I would
at this Clark County, came up.
Probably not, probably 2 days.
Cut the grass at the fire station. And then they had one guy that would call in 911 from a fire station. And the response would be, when they contacted the fire station, well, we still got like 15 minutes, and we'll need to take a shower before we get to the fire. So it wasn't long before Athens, Clark County was back out there cutting grass.
Mm-hmm.
I think 6 would be plenty late enough for us to go.
Absolutely.
I thought we had a deadline of 5.
I thought we were gonna do it. About 5:30, did you put 5:30?
That was for yesterday.
Oh,
Let's do 5:30.
I was thinking about it
Worked
today.
yesterday, let's do 5:30 today.
Look, I had to, my brain's been got too tired for this today.
That's why I was late, I had a water trouble, had to be fixed.
I had these folks are in there doing a quality audit from ISO 9000.
100% comfortable with it.
You know
Thank
that.
you.
So that we can ship all over the world. You qualify, then it makes it just a clear path. If you don't, it's tough, so audit everything and, God,
We were thinking 5:30 too late.
wow. I got hung up with one of them with their checklist,
I tried to read it email, couldn't even have my glasses.
trying to leave.
Couldn't even see it.
I feel your pain.
It's tough. All right, gentlemen.
All right, so the next bulletin is County Manager Administrator. The BOC put together a study committee. This was one of their 4 recommendations, along with economic development and the separation of the water department. We had a retreat last year with ACCG. They came out and we talked about a lot of things in that retreat, and this was one of those topics. A few things that we wanted to determine from the study committee's recommendation. The difference between a manager and administrator role, and which one of those the BOC feels would be best suited for our county, and when you plan on implementing this. And then we'll go into budget, roles, responsibilities, and reporting authority.
So Mike, just to update Mike, in the last CPL meeting we had 2 Fridays ago, the question was asked by CPL, do you want us to look at potentially setting this up for the future of a county manager? And really, or at least exploring the option for this.
And not how that would impact the zoning ordinance
I
at all.
no idea, but there was something to do with the way the verbiage is read between, do you want to reference a manager, do you want to reference administrator, or do you want to reference
We're talking about authority to make some certain decisions without, So would their wording be county manager, county administrator?
Okay.
This person can make this decision. That's where
Those
the
are
discussion.
non-CGL decisions. Everyone I've seen, the ones that don't have to go to the Board of Commissioners are made by the zoning administrator, the planner. That's interesting. I don't know, but I hadn't read it yet. So. Anyway, go ahead.
So just some additional information that's in your packets and on your agenda item report is the difference between the administrator and manager role. The type of government that we have, and then there's a packet out of the handbook. It's a handbook for Georgia County Commissioners. Some of you have this handbook. They're in the process of editing a 5th edition, so it's not available for purchase. The chapter that I printed was 1, it's several pages, but like I said, it goes into the different roles. There's different flow charts for the authority. There's a map in here for counties that have an administrator versus a manager. Some counties have a chairman and an administrator-manager role. According to ACCG, they're both, the manager-administrator is extremely similar. The difference is in executive power. And an executive power is hiring and firing of department heads. There's also different options for creating this position, either by ordinance, and that keeps your full-time chair, because that's the type of government you have, or you can change your form of government, and that's done by referendum.
Well, it's done by General Assembly action, and typically your local delegation is going to require you to have a referendum before they use it.
And that does away with a full-time chair and replaces it with a manager role. That map also shows there's a lot of counties that have a full-time chair and an administrator role. But our current board holds executive powers to hire and fire a department head.
So based on your research and your information, like yours too, how does that work? Number one, does our form of government define the role for the chairman as the administrator?
It defines, I'm doing this from memory, but it says something to the effect that the chairman shall be responsible for the day-to-day operations of the county.
Okay. So with that definition that's in legislation, how do you add an administrator or a manager, and then how would you define who does what? And I think the question I asked to Christina, in this given situation, you're talking about asking somebody to be administrator, when you got somebody's got the current elected administrator has a 4-year contract, but you're talking about hiring somebody as administrator. When you already have an administrator, then it would not have that luxury, and then who defines?
So being responsible for day-to-day operations doesn't mean you have to change every tire at the road department.
Yeah.
The chairman remains ultimately responsible, but he has an administrator who does a lot of the background work for him to give him the context to make the ultimate decisions.
Effectively, they're an executive assistant, is what they are. They shield the chairman from some of the day-to-day, some of the minor stuff, so he can deal with the big things.
Yeah, my experience with it's limited. The county that has that, Oconee does that. They didn't change their charter. They have a county administrator. Justin's good. He's an MPA with a lot of experience before he even came there. He can handle a lot of the having to talk to department heads and he can handle a lot of stuff that in a county that size, the chairman doesn't have time to do by himself. But the chairman's still in charge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would have thought just went through the same thing, a lot smaller than us, but a lot smaller than Oconee County, that administrator, Josh Hawkins, who's now Clark County. It worked well right up until it didn't, and it became a conflict. They were butting heads. One was making calls that the other wasn't aware of. The administrator overstepped multiple boundaries and had to be brought before the Board of Commissioners to rein him back in and have to be explained as to what he can and cannot do. To be honest with you, you know, I have said to this board just recently that I would like to make Christina administrative assistant. When I got here, the Board of Commissioners previous Board of Commissioners had given Rhonda Wooten an administrative assistant title. I think that caused a lot of rift with Kathy, the financial director at the time. Some of that bad blood come from. But at this time, Christina does do a lot of work that would warrant that. I don't want to use the word, I want to caution you, because that's not my intent, probably the wrong word. Bill Toomey made it real clear. A chairman is a lot easier controlled than an administrator is a lot of times, because an administrator don't always give the BOC the full scope of what's going on daily from a manager standpoint. Because they'll just handle it, and you'll never know about it until you find out about it. The BOC chairman normally has to run everything by the BOC, but the day-to-day operations. Managers have a little more power. And Derek probably knows this because of the work that he does, and Mike knows it throughout the state of Georgia. And it's a real simple process as to why you end up with county managers, not leaving the administrator out of it, county managers versus an elected chairman. We all know elected positions are a popularity contest. Sorry. It's just what they are. They're not elected. You're not elected based off your qualifications, your knowledge, or previous year's experience. So what happens in counties all over the United States is you end up with chairmen that have no idea what they're doing. So therefore, a county must hire a manager to make sure that the finances is right, to make sure that the HR policies are followed, to make sure that the legal descriptions are followed. That's when you get into that role. So that's why you see a lot of counties that went to a part-time chair with a full-time manager that can run the operations. I won't argue the fact one way or the other what this BOC decides to do. I will not. I do feel like, as Bill Toomey said, we are lucky to have a good board. I think I do a good job. I know my assistant does a good job. I wouldn't upset that apple cart until you need to upset it, and could be just an election cycle away. In trying to, if I could predict the future, I would be picking lottery tickets, which I'm not, and not able to. But I can foresee the next 8 years at this county, whether it be in myself or my future replacement, if everything went correctly, being pretty solid. But so on the manager standpoint, that's my spiel. The administrative standpoint of it, I would prefer to give more power to my assistant and let her handle some of the things that she has to have me do just because it's my role. And that's the way it's legally written, when I know fully well she's capable of doing it. What it will create is all counties must have a county clerk. We will have to create that position or rehire that position. We feel like we're prepared for that in mine and Christina's conversation, that we think we can make that work. But these are just foods for thought for you guys.
So I've got an email from Bill Toomey that I want to read to you guys that kind of helps give ACCG's opinion. I reached out to Bill. I have a lot of questions because a lot of you have reached out to me with questions. So Bill said, in the most general terms, the county can define the roles as they wish to, talking the difference between administrator and manager roles. There are counties with full-time chairs that have a strong manager position as opposed to an administrator. Strong managers typically have the power to hire and fire department heads, which we've already talked about. Administrators typically do not have that power, although a few do, because the BOC can determine those roles and responsibilities. The BOC then typically sits as an appeal board if a decision made by the administrator is grieved. That often prevents employee terminations going through to EEOC. So the chairman is correct. This board, you are a policy-making body, put policies in place with either a manager or administrator to.
Okay, that's a huge ball of wax there about how employees get terminated and if they have appeals, but leave that aside.
Yeah, and this is where he's explained the difference between the two.
Yeah.
There are counties with full-time chairs that have administrators. In some cases, that administrator reports to the chair, but in most cases, the administrator reports to the full board. I know that was discussed just briefly. Even when they report to the full board, technically, they always have a close relationship between the position of administrator and that of the chair, which makes practical sense. And then he goes into when you change the form of government, the referendum and stuff that Mike had mentioned. He goes into he sees no reason why a full-time chair can't have an administrative assistant. There's counties that do that. But the question would be, what are the powers and responsibilities of that assistant and how it differs from the clerical nature of a county clerk. So that's just another point of view for the differences between the two.
Well, I guess that in looking at that, my question would be, you know, if we're gonna do something like that, and I can see some advantages to doing that, what exactly would you, like, given the situation now, what would you want to convey to an administrator? And you don't have to answer that question now, but I'd like to see that, like, this is what I envision Christina doing, and this is where Todd's got, and this is where we're giving her, this is what I'd like to see as authority. Now, you know, we can have some input and those kind of things, but I'd like to see just, because I don't know on a daily basis all things y'all are doing. So y'all know what you're doing.
And I think that, I've spoken with the commissioner about the difference between the two and kind of who fills that role now. And my understanding is, and me and Todd, we talked about this, that he fills that role of manager, administrator now.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Whatever he's got,
Separate out.
I want to separate what duties that he's totally responsible for now would he give to you.
That would be it.
Maybe in essence, you're doing some of that stuff already, but just get the list of what's.
It would be great if it was discretionary, just to be honest, like at my discretion. And I say that because I'll give you, for instance, today.
Yeah, but
There was probably 27 topics that come before us today. And out of those 27, 18 of them, Christina could have given them an answer, but she said, let me check with the chairman.
right. But this is, and that's.
So they all change topics constantly. So I think it's at the discretion of the chairman.
Yeah. But if it's not clearly defined, it'll come down to being a conflict sometime.
You're right.
There would
$1,000%.
have to be a job description
Definitely.
that, number one, just like we talked about, that there would have to be some organizational chart that defines, is this administrative assistant somewhere in there? She doesn't come directly to us, but, at some point, Todd will tell her, go to them. It's like a dotted line.
Yeah.
But also, and I'll tell you, one of the reasons I like the idea of an administrator or administrative assistant, this is not to take anything away from other departments that we have in here, but this courthouse is plagued with one-person departments, and here I am going to pick on the department in regards to that, and Mike touched on it briefly, one being our HR department, that I see, I could not imagine how the state deals with 200 plus or minus employees that work, 3/4 of them are in the courthouse and the rest of them are remote.
Actually, our 3/4 remote, only 1/4 of them in the courthouse.
But whatever the mix, and I can see where so much of the chairman's time can be taken up with things that come across the hall and say, what do you think, what do you think, what do you think? And you know.
And I can assure you, if I'm not there, they're going to Christina, what do you think?
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying, if we're doing the job now, I would be compelled to support something like that, but we've got to have job description, and we've got to have an organizational chart, and we've got to have
That's
what
something
the
we can
duties
pull,
are.
Christina. We can pull job descriptions.
Yeah, I've pulled some, this document also goes through, it kind of structures some of that, like either your manager or administrator, one of them is specifically over the budget and like personnel, or the other is over, like the day-to-day. Sometimes the counties that we've seen that they'll split departments. So chairman may be over the road department, administrator over planning and zoning, and you know, you go down the list like that. But this was really helpful to, one, for me to wrap my head around the differences between the two, the structures, and then there's some job descriptions that's cool.
And they work. I mean, those, don't get me wrong, county managers work right up till they don't.
Well, and yeah, that's what I was going to try to avoid that though.
So with, one of the things we haven't spoke on, and it's going to come down to this, unfortunately, is a consequence. And it's going to be the salaries. It's going to be the salaries of a planning director. It's going to be the salaries of the economic director. It's going to be the salaries of the sheriff. It's going to be the salaries of the chairman. It's going to be the clerk's salary or administrator's salary. That's going to be a hard stepping stone for the general public to understand. Now, we know that an economic developer, a good one, will pay for themselves, just like a grant writer. We know that a good planning director will be worth his weight in gold. But at what point do they overstep the sheriff? School systems done this. The reason we're now at a higher position of a superintendent wasn't just because they did not like electing a superintendent anymore. It was because you couldn't elect one for the salary needed to fill the role. Nobody would take the job. Nobody would sign up to be a school superintendent at $60,000 when you can hire one at $180. And when the ball changed across the board where everybody was hired, that's the only way they could get the best guy for the job. It changed. So we have to keep in mind what the sheriff's going to do. What are we going to do about the sheriff? What are you going to do about the chairman? What are you going to do about the chief deputy? What are you going to do about the clerk when we start hiring these very expensive roles that's coming down the board? Because we saw it with the last one. Not just picking on him, but
Well, I guess.
economic director is going to cost you $180,000.
In response to that, I guess in response to that, what are we gonna do next year when we don't look and find somebody?
No, I'm just saying, be prepared to answer that question. What I say.
You know, that's business.
I agree. We have to do these things. What I'm saying is, be careful not about not hiring the guy and paying him $150. Be careful about the guy that you got, and he only makes half of that. What are you going to do then? That's all I'm saying.
Same thing I tell folks that work for me. It's a great big world out there. Go look at it. You know.
You can do that in the private sector, but not in the elected sector. You can't tell the 16-year tax commissioner that.
Well, but that's an elected official.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying you're going to have to adjust your elected officials' raises.
No.
I don't.
No.
I bet you do.
Most are elected.
No, you don't. A person chooses their value and what they'll work for.
Okay.
There's some, I mean, they got.
I can assure you, Fulton County did not hire a $310,000 or elect.
Who?
Any county.
Well, no, but, yeah, but they.
It's like saying, you know, we got counties in Georgia that pay their commissioners $160,000 a year too.
Oh, yeah.
And I ain't looking for that, because I ain't making a living doing this.
And I get what you're saying, I'm just saying, be careful of repercussions.
Well, okay, so,
That's all, just
with
one.
that statement, then we don't need to be adding stuff and creating division of labor.
Probably one of the, remember, I think I got this off the CCG website of the map of county government structure, who's got what. And you may have started doing this, but maybe try to find either the personnel policy, job description, whatever defines the role of a county administrator for these counties that have county administrators. I'm sure there's variations, and just see kind of what some of the options other people have done. One thing you'll have to decide in doing that is, one of the things Christina mentioned there is, does the county administrator report through the chain of command of the chairman and then to the board, or directly to the board? You have had situations that you may or may not be aware of where you've had department heads who know that because they are only terminable by the full board of commissioners, play politics. So anytime you have somebody who doesn't report, I think, to the chair and then through the chair to the board, that's a risk that has to be considered.
That map is in the packet that I.
Oh, really? Okay.
That I gave you
Yeah,
guys.
that's right.
I was just looking at that map too, right there, and I guess where I keep drifting to, if that's the right word, is, I mean, over 60%, 70% of the counties have a non-elected kind of day-to-day operational person. And, you know, you can have bad employees, you can have bad elected officials too. I get it. I mean, so any organization is subject to that. What I see as a continuation of what's been going on in my career is things are just getting more technical and more regulated. And I know an education is not the end-all be-all, but when you pair that with some real-life experience, then that's what brings somebody value to a higher level. And I think those are the type of people that, you know, it is a career in service, you know, and then those are the type of people that bring, you know, they want to do a good job. It takes the political nature out of it in terms of that recommendations, like we talked about the P&Z people. Somewhat, there's politics in every city, I get it. But from the good managers I've worked with over my career, can say objectively, this is it. You may want to consider this for either historical or political purposes. And those are the guys and gals that are just, to me, are just worth their weight in gold. And again, go back to where we want to be, not somebody's name, but the position that we want and the task that we want people to do. How we implement the policies, who's ever sitting in these 5 chairs, and moving that ball forward and trying to implement the progressive nature that we want to and protect the rural nature that we want to protect. And it's just getting more and more complicated to say it's just up to each, you know, every 4 years.
It's tough.
It's just, I don't see how we not move forward in one way or another.
I 100% agree with what Derek just said. It's tough.
What would be the difference between a county administrator and an administrative assistant that you were talking about earlier? Is it just
You have the difference in the administrative assistant and,
like you said, the
The
previous.
authorities and responsibility that role does.
Yeah, and that was the question, that's what I was asking, what?
When I looked up, Georgia community affairs. They have a lot of salaries and descriptions and stuff. An administrative assistant is just an assistant to the daily paperwork and phone calls and running to the post office and running to the bank, those type of duties that separates them from an administrator roles and responsibilities. The pay scale's completely different. Like I said, the responsibilities are different. Their authorities are different. Another number I wanted to point out from Bill Toomey, there's 17 counties in Georgia that have a full-time chair and some sort of manager-administrator role.
Yeah, I mean, those terms seem to be kind of fluid. I guess in my mind, I think of a manager being, and I don't know if this is how they're defining it, and how it's used on that map. I think of it as something like Athens, Clarke County, where the whole charter's been redone to have this manager position that reports directly to the board and has these executive duties that the chairman or mayor doesn't have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the difference. That's the difference with
Yeah,
the
totally
manager.
more government.
Yeah.
Requires legislative approval and then a referendum.
Yes, that's right.
Where if we go with a county administrator, if we were to say that a county administrator would complement what the chairman or chairperson does. So
I think that's right, and again, I think there's probably as many different job descriptions and ways of having a county administrator as there are county administrators in the city of Georgia. Which I say I pull something to look.
Essentially, the chairman would outline the items that he would defer to the administrator to address.
I don't know how that, I mean, it may be that in these counties that there may be something that the Board of Commissioners votes on to define the county administrator role. I think there probably is.
But here again, there would be clearly defined areas that the chairman, at the end of the day, he would present to us, this is what I would want the administrator to handle.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
It's very similar to the sheriff and the chief deputy.
Yeah.
They have the chief deputy is the right hand to the sheriff. He has a defined set of rules that he operates off of each day.
Yeah, I mean, just from
Right
sitting
up
in
under the sheriff.
for my friend Daniel in Oconee County sometimes when he's on vacation, you know, a lot of times Justin presents things, I mean, obviously the chairman presides. Sometimes the chairman presents things, sometimes Justin, the administrator, presents things, sometimes they present them together. But I mean, it looks like, I mean, they have a good, you know, like you, they have a good chairman with a good background, and they work together well.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, as far as just that, what would you be delegating, basically, to Christina? And she may be already doing some of that already, but this is the roles and function things that you would delegate. And so then that's clearly what she's doing, what you're responsible for, and then that also clears it up. I want to protect, for each other, because you know how it is. Just like you said a while ago, it works until it don't work. Well, you can all of a sudden one person does something, and the other person said, "Well, I thought," and then we got this whole issue, and we just don't need that along with all the other things we got to work on. We don't need an issue between two people who are striving to do the right thing, and all of a sudden have a conflict that because it's not knowing exactly what those duties were. So that's the only reason I think it needs to be there.
And just personally speaking, I've never, ever had a work relationship with like I have with Christina.
Yeah.
She knows what I'm thinking, and most of the time I know what she's thinking, just the opposite of me. But jokingly saying that, I do see the value in she's got it, she's right, but she had to wait on me to say it. And we work so well together.
Well, I think that this administrator role that you're talking about, I envision it so much more in depth because there's so many times I leave a meeting and I'm like, well, the board, y'all talked about moving a water department, but who's gonna do it? You talked about a four-way stop, and the attorney said you needed some data, but who's gonna do it? You know, so you talk about, the board talks about all these, and that's what I envision that administrator role doing. You talk about building a 911 center, but I haven't heard anything else about it. You talk about moving the road department, I haven't heard anything else about it, because that's not a county clerk's role, and I said this a ton of times. I am never above to say that's not my job, but I do have a pay scale that I work with. That's what I do. So it's not so much that administrator is here to answer questions about a pressure washer over the road department because somebody needs to use it and gives the yes, you can go get it. It's not just that daily stuff. It's so much more of what the board is wanting done. And that's where I say, and the way I view it now is that the chairman holds that administrator manager role of responsibilities.
Well, and I think Todd said a while ago that maybe you work more closely with the in the budget stuff and all that kind of stuff, and and maybe some of those are delegated. So that's the kind of thing that I would like to see just written down, what the role is. It doesn't have to be specific, this is,
Right.
but it's generally, these are the areas that you've got responsibilities in, and then, I mean, he's overall gonna still be the head of that, and then, of course, you may still go ask him a question if you're not sure of, but on a daily basis, there's things that if he delegates them to him, you can tell them without them having to go. So, and those kind of things, y'all can work out between you two, and I just want to see that. I'd like to see that and have that clearly and have that sort of that understanding, because, and I don't disagree, Todd, I'm sure you and Christine get along great, but you never know down the road what happens. But stuff like that where it's clearly defined will avoid that, because I can tell you, I worked enough jobs, and I've had people work that, you need to have clearly defined what the roles are. That's one of the problems. I want our HR department to clearly define what all these other folks are supposed to be doing here in this place, because I'm sure that, it would make it much better. It would also be better that you could reward those folks that do excellent jobs or superior than the others, and the ones that don't, you could have some basis for doing whatever you needed to do, with them. But, so that's why I say job descriptions is important, and I just think and this is the right way to handle it, is to do that. And y'all know what you want to do, so
We'll work on that.
just write on it, yeah.
Okay,
We can come up with something.
see like what Hart County and Oconee County and Wilkes County, like get their administrative
Yeah.
job description and see what's
We can.
similar between all of those.
We'll work together on putting something together for y'all. All right, go ahead, Christina, go next.
The next bulletin item is county business license. Does the county desire to implement a business license? And then if so, what is that time frame that you would like to have this implemented? We need to discuss a software system to do that, specifically what department you want to put that in.
There's a lot of choices.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
and I don't even know if you put a time frame on it yet. That's a whole, there's, I know when I talked to Denny about it, I come up with some extra questions. When I talked to Todd about it, I come up with some extra questions that I have. Lacey and I did put together some drafts of an ordinance, and that's in your file. I've reviewed it twice, and each time I review it, I come up with more questions. So I'm not saying that this is it. This is stuff we just pulled together from other counties. We put together an application.
I think the first bullet point is an answer. Does the county desire to implement business license? I think yes. I think that is a no-brainer, yes. Now, how we get there, what time frame we get there, I do not know. But you've already started it. You and Lacey have an ordinance. My suggestion is to take that ordinance home, guys. Pick it apart, read it, add, delete, redline it, whatever you'd like to do. get it back to us, and then we can work from the ordinance to gather a time frame.
Okay, there's a whole set of statutes that talk about this.
Okay.
Let me start here. A city or county may levy and collect occupation taxes on businesses and practitioners that have an office or location within a local government jurisdiction. These occupation taxes may be used to raise revenue for the local government. Significantly, the law uses the term occupation tax rather than business license. As a result, cities and counties now provide a business with an occupation tax certificate, signifying the payment of annual occupation taxes instead of a business license. While some local government ordinances still refer to business licenses, that term is out of date.
That's correct, yeah, you're right.
I've said that a million times, but I'm not sure I ever got it right.
It's just habit, call it a business license, but it is an occupational tax.
So it's a tax, its purpose is to raise revenue. I think I should ask before I say that, I think the reason that you all are saying we need to have these is because, businesses pay their occupation tax in the county where their principal office is located. If they don't, if their principal office is located in the county that doesn't have it, they may have to buy license, pay taxes in multiple jurisdictions, and you're getting requests from your local citizens to have it, so they can just pay it here and not have to do it other places.
Probably like all other occupational taxes, it started out as a good faith effort to do right by somebody, and it ended up being a revenue generator. And we'll probably start the same way. We're not looking to generate revenue as much as we're trying to be able to offer a service that just so happens offsets the cost.
Yeah, and actually one of the many details of it is if you generate more revenue than the cost, you have to have a public hearing to determine how it's spent. You have to pick which of the four methods you're going, authorized by statute, you're going to use to charge, which is number of employees, profitability ratio, gross receipts, or flat fee. Ideally, I mean, it's tax, should be enforceable. Now, I can tell you, a lot of the cities and even the counties in Georgia that have occupation tax certificates are doing a very haphazard job of enforcing and collecting, and probably their ordinances don't even comply with state law, but people are glad, if their fees are low, people are glad to pay it there, so they don't have to pay it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Dick and I went to the chamber presentation at some of different cities, and they talked about that, and the taxes are not that high, what they're charging, because, in fact, the lady from city of Monroe, was it? She talked about that they made sure theirs didn't cover totally all theirs.
right.
Because they didn't want to get into having to sit down and figure out what they're going to do with money, have a public meeting about deciding that and all that. So they were honest with it. But they did say that that's because people are requesting it, that they are doing that. And so I guess you look at it as somewhat a service if you got to have that. I don't know. Is every county around us have one except for us?
I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of things has changed. Denny, I have a business license in the city. Denny has one in another county.
Yeah, in Clark County.
It's becoming almost an obligation because contractors, out-of-state contractors, all construction is requiring that license, and you can't get insured without that license. So it's almost now that it's not just if we want to do it, it's almost like it's an obligation of us to offer it, even if it's free.
Okay.
Even if it's $1.99, we are still doing a service to our business owners to say, I got it, and yes, I can work in Alabama on the project.
So look, which one of these, so we got these folks working on this and all this other, and I don't know, do we have the expertise within our staff to figure out how we should go about it?
We're already doing it.
Huh?
We're already doing it. The building inspection office requires you to pay a $5 registration fee every year.
Okay.
So,
For contractors?
yes,
I did not know that. So that, I was wondering if that would come up. So there,
It comes
you can have, you can have actual licenses. And contractors' licenses are a common one. But if you do that, number one, you cannot generate more revenue than it costs you to do it, just like building permits. And number two, you must perform a regulatory function. You must somehow have somebody in the county that's, you know, and some rules that they're administrating, and we don't.
Well, so, no, that's not true. So, we do, because if you come into the building office to pull a permit, you can request a piece of paper that has all of the registered contractors on it that we know of, that paid that $5.
So how are we regulating those contractors?
We're not, I'm just saying, these,
Well, they should be charged
we
with
can't
regulatory
tell
fee.
you, I mean, I don't know how they do it. But what I'm saying is, the service is, you don't have to do a service for each individual one. But as long as somebody says, hey, do you have a vendor list for people in your county? And you say, yep, right there it is. There's your service that's provided.
But if you want to do that voluntarily, but you can't charge them $5.
Yeah, I don't know about the $5
regulatory fee.
I didn't know there was a $5 fee. I just thought you had to be added to the list. That's the first I've heard.
let's see, I mean, for me personally, number one, we do not enter into any contracts, or it's part of every contract now that you provide your state license, your trade license, your business license, your insurance certificate. I mean, those are just standard parts of a contract now. I cannot imagine Athens, Clark County allowing a contractor to perform public work in the county without those.
Without what?
Business license.
Why would they care? I'm not arguing with you that they do it.
Why would
But
they
it's-
care? Because the reason it's such a big deal is because if you knowingly enter into a contract with a contractor who is not licensed and insured, then you are assuming the liability for anything he may or may not do.
You're going right back to me, to thinking that this business license is some sort of license that means something. It doesn't. It just means you pay the tax that the local government pays.
Yeah, but I can go anywhere in the state of Georgia, in any county, with the business license from Clark County, or I can go to every jurisdiction where we work at and buy a business license.
I know.
You only have
That's
to
all,
have
so
one.
that's what I'm saying. That's the only service you're providing, this occupation tax certificate, is keeping your local businesses from having to buy them other
But if
places.
you don't have that occupational tax certificate, you're excluded from working.
But as a consumer, I sure want to know that you're insured. I want to know that you're a licensed plumber. I couldn't care less as your customer, your client, whether you're paying occupation tax certificate or not. You care because you don't want to have to buy one in Clark County where I live if your business is here in Madison County.
Yeah. Well,
It's way more expensive, yeah.
yeah, well, the other
Yeah.
side of it, in Danielsville, it's $35, and in Athens, Clark County
Right.
is,
So I think, well, for time's sake, I mean, we need, is this something we want to try to work on through the remainder of the year? Is this something we want to budget for? These are the questions, I guess, or just
Well, if we had a
something.
county administrator, we could assign it to them.
You could.
I mean, it's not that hard. I think you'd probably choose the flat fee because that's the easiest.
It's the easiest.
Voluntary.
Do the most basic, which years ago, I actually drafted a bare bones ordinance, occupation tax ordinance that met the minimums of state law. But it's been a long time.
But it would be voluntary, it would not require businesses to.
No, you can't say that. You can't say
Yeah.
that.
Can't do that.
You're the in or out.
It's a tax. You're in or out. Now,
We
how much
might not
resources
pursue
you
it.
devote
Yeah.
to pursuing it, I guess is up to you. But it ain't voluntary. It's a tax, and they're delinquent on taxes if they don't pay it.
We tell everybody that you got to do it if you got it, but.
Now, the downside of that is, if you don't pay it, what are you gonna do and how are you gonna enforce it?
Well, maybe we don't. I mean, that's what you're just talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
how much do we pursue it? You know, we say you need to do this, we put a thing out there. If somebody didn't come, how do we know that we missed a business? You know what I'm saying?
This is where it gets really hard in rural counties.
Yeah.
I know we're discussing a lot about Athens, Clark County, but what Athens, Clark County has is Athens, Clark County has leverage Madison County does not have, and it's called water. And just like the city of Danielsville and the city of Comer, who both offer business license, if you do not re-up your business license each year, they'll cut your water off.
If you got a storefront, right?
Here's
If you got
here's the more dangerous way I've seen it tried to be enforced is somebody you don't like files a zoning application you don't like. One of y'all calls me, I'm not saying this happened here, you don't have it, it happened, but one of y'all calls me and says, well, this guy can't get this rezoned because he hasn't paid his occupation tax. But you didn't check anybody else's occupation tax on that much zoning agenda.
So that's the reason it's all in and all out. And to hold somebody accountable for renewal makes it even harder. So this is a complicated process. Do we need it? I think so. Are we willing to go through what it's gonna take to get it, like the county did a few years back? You was here for that probably last time.
Oh, yeah, that's right, we actually had it for a little while.
Yeah, for about a year.
I don't remember why they repealed it.
They couldn't figure out how to do it.
Couldn't figure out how to administer it, yeah.
Is it too far-fetched? I'm gonna go a different direction with this.
Sure.
Can it be, and I guess I've always thought it this way, whether it is or not, can it be a tool for, what I'm gonna say, public safety? And so, I have a chemical company, I pay my $25 flat fee, I'm not really trying to make money off of it, but just, here's my tax, here's my $25, here's my place of business, and as part of that application, knowing what, I'm not saying that they list out everything, but, you know, we have X, Y, Z cost of chemicals, or we have potentially to have this kind of concern. And those can be flagged in, you know, in a database, and we can provide that to our fire departments. It's just, so when they run into somewhere, they might at least have an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's been mentioned before, and it could be a great information gathering tool of all kinds of information.
I mean, it's, any database, you gotta feed the animal, and you gotta be careful, and I understand that, but I'm just trying to.
I mean, what I've always thought about in response to that is, if they're not I thought about it as a database for zoning purposes. So my thought is, I mean, if they're already conducting, an illegal use on their property and daring us to come out and find them and stop it, they're probably not gonna pay the occupation tax certificate they were not enforcing.
Well, that's true, but let's say an argument that, you know, 70-80% are, you know, people are honest, and just, you know, here I am, this is what I wanna do, and all of a sudden now we're catching or advising somebody that occupation is not allowed in that zone.
Yeah, that's true, but then we catch the honest people, we still don't catch the dishonest ones.
Well,
You know, and it's like any other
family
license.
reunion, they'll get mad. Call.
There's so many flaws in license now. You gotta be a licensed electrician, you gotta be a licensed plumber, you gotta be a licensed HVAC guy, but you don't gotta be licensed to build the structure that holds all that up. They can fall on your head. Just the way it is. So, and it goes back with the business licenses, where the pushback. General contractor, that's it, but not the framer.
There's no framer license.
No framer license, no hand nailer license. And that's sad, but that's true, but not trying to get off point, but I think where you're gonna get your pushback is, and I know it's where you're gonna get your pushback. Once I fill that out, that's permission for them to come inspect what I own. That's what, like, I want a bulldozer, I want a dump truck, whatever, you don't see me, I'm in Pioli, you're not looking
We
at
already
me.
done that. We had a man last night was going places and looking at stuff.
We did, I love it, I think you've done a great job. So I've always questioned this, does a farmer pay tax on his hay? Do they pay sales tax? Does a farmer that bales hay and sells it on the roundabout corner for $6
Well,
a
there's
building. Does he pay
sales
sales
tax
tax?
exemptions, and a lot of them agricultural, that maybe went up.
There's no sales tax.
Yeah, but that's
But you don't have to
because that's the law. not
Yeah,
because-
it's law, it's not. Now, somebody that's doing,
But a lot of farmers don't feel
If I'm
comfortable.
selling peaches, I would have to do it.
Peaches.
yeah.
Okay, I didn't know, I was asking. But a lot of farmers don't feel comfortable when people come treading on the property like you're fixing to increase their taxes.
Well, yeah, but this is, so you, I don't know, that's an ethical thing though.
You're right.
You don't, all of a sudden, we, as commissioners, start deciding, you know, we don't do something because of the fact that somebody's gonna get mad and get upset about it, and we can't be doing that.
And I don't think that, the commissioners vote on approving
No,
occupational tax.
there's nothing
It's
to
all
it.
administratively done,
It just means,
so you just set parameters and guidelines around what you want.
But
That's,
somebody calls and complains about that, I'm saying, let's
Tell
talk
Mr. Lamar.
to your new county administrator.
Yeah.
Let me give you Christine's phone number, man.
He said, he knocked you down.
Hey,
some places actually have, and this is why I say, most cities and counties do not have this debate about occupation tax. They just do it. It is de facto voluntary.
that's what I do.
But they have such misconceptions about it. And I can name you numerous little tiny cities off the top of my head that will tell you, oh, well, yeah, if you want to have a business here, you gotta fill out this application for a business license and come to a council meeting and tell us what you're gonna do, and we'll decide if that's the kind of business we want here.
I've seen
That
that
is
happen.
not how it works.
No, it's not.
And we're not gonna,
But they think it.
well, we're not gonna do that though.
All right, so let's move on a little bit more forward on that. Because I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're at least headed up. And just for the record, I stated I'm for it. I just don't know how to get there. Special tax, I'm sorry, Christina, go ahead.
Yep, special tax district, it's another one we've mulled over a few times. Does the county have a current need for a special tax district? If so, for what services? Me and Lacey's done a little research into this, and you can write a special tax district ordinance as a whole for a capital improvement project. You can write it specifically for street lighting. You can write it for fire districts to fund fire departments. And the reason why we have this on our agenda and discussion, Commissioner Chandler and I believe Mr. Doster have some roads in their districts that need has residences that would like for the county to take over private drives. But those roads are going to require a large amount of money to bring them up to not even county standards, but just drivable standards. So does the board want to start drafting a special tax district ordinance specifically for capital improvement or capital infrastructure? However I have it worded.
So just a little input before y'all put in too much thought in this. I'm concerned about this one right now only because of what come out of Gato, the Lamar Dalton's tax assessor.
Oh, Georgia Association of Tax
That's right,
Commissioners.
yes.
Yeah.
So special tax districts right now is in limbo for potentially a vote that's coming up, and if it changes, Lamar and them says they don't even know how. Matter of fact, it's all over the state of Georgia can't figure out how to do the math to make them work. So they're changing everything about how counties currently have them. I think if you currently have them, you're good, you can still collect that way, but if you don't have them and try to implement it, there's a new collection process, and nobody knows how to do it yet, so.
I didn't know that.
It's like the calculation process of if we took Bluestone Hills and it took us $1.2 million to fix, how do we calculate that by residence mileage, yearly tax, additional tax on their,
Yeah, I mean, the ability to do them is in the Georgia Constitution, so that wouldn't change, but I can see what you're saying. The way to collect them has been through the tax commissioner's office on the tax bill.
Correct.
So
And
they
it
could
may be
change that
changed.
part of it.
That's right. So all I'm saying is we can still talk about this, but I would first at least ask Lamar, what does he think's coming down the pipe? Because he said he felt it was 100% gonna pass because the state wanted it to pass.
Is that gonna be?
Are they looking at mandating a way to do it?
A defined procedure for, is that what they're looking at?
He said there was no procedure, but they were all in agreement, whoever the board over that group of folks says we're making a change, because what we're doing now will not go past this year. They just don't know what they're gonna
They
change
don't want to do
to.
it anymore, so they may be looking to have, rather than a statutory change, do something through a Department of Revenue regulation, is what it sounds like, which that would probably work.
Now, what they're saying, DOR.
Yeah.
But I would at least drop a phone call to him and say, what do you think's changing before we put too much thought in this one?
So how would that affect what we're trying to address?
Because we gotta figure out how to implement,
How to collect it.
how to collect the money.
Well, but that's something we can talk and find out about, I mean.
I've wondered about that because some counties have a lot of little special tax districts, and I've wondered if that's not a big burden on the tax commissioners to bill it.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I just know he briefly, him and Melanie was sitting down there one day saying, if the state passes this, we as a county will have to hire somebody to figure out how to do it, because we don't have a clue and they don't have a clue how to instruct us at this point.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
And I said, well, then maybe it won't go through. And they said, oh, no, it's going to pass, because they stated, we're changing it. We just don't know to what yet.
Okay.
Well, if there's some changes in the wind, and we need to see what they are, I kind of understand that, it falls. But on the other hand, if there's a road that needs to be paved, or somebody, they're all on wells and they ain't got fire protection, and there's 10 of them, and whether there's by lane, if 10 citizens come to me and say, okay, we want to do this, we all fund it and we let it pay you back, whether it's 20 years, 30 years, I mean, somehow that, I don't think people in Brian's district ought to be paying for that little bit.
Right.
But if Aunt Sally shows up and says, I'll write a check for half of it, if my other folks will, if they can figure it out, I think I would like a mechanism to either say yes, and whatever that value may be. Because, you may come up and say, I'll write a check for pave the road today, but we know there's going to be maintenance. We're going to either have to accept the fact that we're going to do that, or it's going to be 1.25 times because it's going, get a little bit more because we know maintenance is coming down the road. But in a general sense, I think there's an opportunity.
Yeah, so get to the details. One of the decisions you have to make is what percentage of landowner, parcel owners in the tax district have to approve it before you do it.
And see, that makes
60%.
See, that's a hard one for somebody like Bluestone Hills.
I think it's in Brian's district, by the way. I don't know why I get phone calls.
Well,
Dennis gets, not Bluestone, I'm sorry, no, Lake Deerfield, sorry.
that's what I'm saying, and ain't
Yeah.
nobody from Bluestone
So,
call me.
Oh, God.
I think that's yours. I think it's.
It is in mine. Ain't nobody called me
So
about it.
Deerfield's got 14 houses, but they're all on the left-hand side of
They
the
don't
road.
want you going to
While
Bluestone.
the right-hand side of the road
He wants us coming in there with the road.
is a 80-acre parcel.
He's the owner.
How to
The rest
divide
of them
that?
don't want nobody down.
You got one man that owns 80 acres versus 14 people that owns 20 acres.
He called you?
Yeah.
I got
How is that division gonna be based off per acre division?
Bo Jones.
And how fair is it to the guy that's just got,
I think it got
Cattle.
forwarded to me.
well, on 80 versus the guy that's got 600, 700, 800 of them?
I don't know, you would set the parameter, the geographic.
I just say that's the hard part.
Of your special tax district, so your special tax district could be one of the subdivision, but not the last name is three, I suppose.
Well, what me and Christina come up with about a year or two ago was, we were basing, just as a preliminary way to say, are we even gonna talk about this road or not? Was gonna be based on.
We try to make it financially achievable. And I think I have come to the terms that it probably won't be financially achievable for everybody. So that, then, you have petitions you can sign, and you can require, like this ordinance says, 75% of the property owners sign a petition within 45 days. Some of them say 100%. I think that's kind of where it's not I view it as it's not up for the board to decide if a capital improvement project is financially achievable for us as individuals, but as that taxpayer, if that's a service they want and they're willing to pay for it, we are providing the option for them to.
Here's where, and I feel like I'm sort of right in line with Derek with this, and whether it be road or whether somebody says we will carry water down through here, somebody has a private drive, there's 10 people on this private drive, every one of those citizens bought that property knowing up front this is a private drive. And then at some point in time, it's gonna happen with every one of them, at some point in time, they come to us and demand that you take this road and you bring it. And I don't feel like it is appropriate for the county at large to pay for the capital improvements that are going to affect a given small number of people that made that choice to put them in that position. So whether it be the county adopting that private drive, or whether it be the county taking water to this group of people, or what those capital improvements are, is it only benefits that group of people. And I'm looking for a mechanism, you demand me that the financial responsibility is yours because you made that decision. That's obviously at some point the county would take it over to maintain it, the county would do that water system. But it's just fundamentally to me, this an opportunity to get those improvements made, but it's on the shoulders of those people who are going to reap the benefits of that, not on the county's own. So I feel like it's very important for us to work in that direction for these to solve these demands. And at some point in time, a mechanism is going to have to exist to make it happen. We may have to wait a month or two or three to get that mechanism, but for us to move forward this, I think very, very.
Mike, you already know this, or you might want to check as we're asking questions and learning. For example, what if you got it's one thing for somebody to come and say, we'll pay you back for $100,000, charge us $2,000 a year, we pay for it. It's another thing when somebody comes in and says, we got a $10 million project we want y'all to do for it, and we're going to pay for it over 30 years. That may be a bond that may have to go out, and especially tax districts, be the revenue source for the revenue bond to pay it back. I mean, I'm just trying to, we may get to a point where we don't have enough cash to do a project that actually might be good and beneficial to those people, and they're willing to pay for it, but also, their checkbook ain't enough to float for 20 years.
Yep.
So, I mean.
And the other part of this, like on this road deal, is.
Yeah, I know, we have to know 2 steps instead of one there.
It's going to be assigned to the property and not necessarily the owner. Let's say somebody who is the owner at the time that this is done, well, they sell and somebody else buys. Well, that obligation's got to stay with the property.
Yeah.
And there's so many downsides to all of this. People buying houses on dirt road wanting us to do this because we know that after about 8 years to 10 years, that asphalt's got to be retreated again.
But this is why
This is just the first.
I don't want private drives and easements, because at some point in time we're going to get.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, those are from a planning perspective. The flip side of that is then you have a lot of little separate driveways coming out into your roads.
It's the landlocked ones also. All right, we want to go ahead and move forward because honestly, until we know we can put something together, but until we really know what Lamar's got going on.
So we can do a yes, move forward on this, everything except for how to calculate.
Well, I mean, so the things you got to determine, I mean, the ordinance patterns are out there. You're going to have to decide what percentage of landowners you require to approve it, how you're going to determine your amount, how many years you're going to allow it to be apportioned over. And then the last piece I jotted down is the collection part that we're waiting to find out.
So can we get general recommendations back to us on how that would be most ideal? Best we know how it.
Not for me, I just know.
Well, I get that.
And I don't know if you heard me a minute ago about Lake Deerfield. There's 14 residents on the left side of the road that own 50 acres. But then you got a right-hand side of the road, it's just a 50-acre hayfield.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that now?
Oh, that's the other thing I jotted down is,
Money on the bill.
you're going to have to apportion it by parcel, obviously, because you're billing it by parcel. Now,
you do percentages, like this parcel is 100 feet, this one is 200?
I've never said, I think it probably can be done that way, because you have so much.
But those
flexibility.
are questions that have to be answered.
Practically speaking, I've only ever seen it done by parcels, but I've also only ever seen it done in subdivisions where all the parcels are the same.
We could modify, let's think about that. Modify the LC form. That's population and lane miles. You could almost apply that. It's like how many lots per, frontage. So the one that he was talking about, there's a certain amount because you live there, then there's a certain amount because you got a lot more of it. Now, we still have to decide if that's the payment formula, we'd still have to say 80% of the people's got to vote for that, or 60%.
I feel like if you did it that way, though, you don't really want 100%.
Let's just do each parcel. Engineer, let me get out my integral calculus textbook.
I feel like if you did it by that lane miles, you'd want it to be 100% of a petition, because if you have someone that owns the majority of the road, and they're the only ones that don't sign it, when they're gonna pay the majority of the cost.
What now?
There's different options.
If you just did like lane mile, or just, frontage, so.
Yeah, you did that right.
And what do you do once that special tactic, if something's facetious, how people do it, you think about, so what if that fellow that owns all that, he sells it, yeah.
He's gonna sell it after it's paid.
Yeah, well, again, it follows the parcel.
But then like that parcel that was one now becomes 2.
They're going to the beach without me, by the way. That's what they stop by to tell me. Come up, we're on the beach.
All right,
Some of us got work.
Motion to adjourn is always in order. You can get rid of it.
I can't. Derek's off Monday and Christina's off Monday. We got a meeting Monday. I have to stay home.
Okay, so the last one is county employee relations.
County employee relations, oh yeah.
This is all things HR. In your thing, here's the drafted handbook, employee handbook. The attorney has some requirements on the employee handbook, personnel policy handbook, that I'll let you go over on what the updates, how they change, how you send out changes to, okay?
Yeah, somebody's ran over my grade.
So I think what has come up, just to be honest, if Dennis and I both agree that when you get hired here, we should be able to hand you a handbook. Now, if the handbook is strictly made up of policies or ordinances, that's fine. But we need to have that condensed down into a really good-looking book that they can take home and read, even if it's nothing more than our policies and ordinances, because that's what you said. What we have now is anyway. It's just our code of ordinances.
Well, I mean, your personnel policy is within your code of ordinances. Your personnel policy is so concise. Let me back up, start a different sentence. Any lawyer is going to pucker up when you say employee handbook, because we're worried about the handbook getting off track with the personnel policy over time, or misconstruing it, paraphrasing things that have different meanings, and then which one controls. So obviously, any lawyer's preference is going to be just give them your personnel policies. They're pretty short, and have them sign off that when you hire them, or some places do it periodically. I think probably at hire is sufficient. That I have read and understand and agree to abide by personnel policies in Madison County.
Another thing that was brought up by
But give me the counterpart.
another thing that was brought up by commissioners was the current hiring process. What that process was, it's in the ordinances, and I've copied it, put it in your packet. Employee evaluation process, it is also in the ordinance, and I've printed it and put it in your packet. The same for disciplinary action processes. All those are in the ordinance, printed and put in your packet for you to review. So if you want to make changes or have some of those be more detailed versus not, that's up to you guys. When we contracted with Evergreen Solutions, they came in, did a wage study, they revamped our evaluation process. So HR has that. Those get sent out and sent back in once a year. I know we have talked about and incorrectly talked about and discussed COLAs, raises, and evaluation processes as one conversation. Some commissioners have said that they'd like to have that more defined out and separated out for what y'all, for the future. We do not have an action plan for promotions or lateral moves within the ordinance. We do not have an exit interview process. Evergreen Solutions did provide an analysis of compensation and classification plan and a revised performance evaluation document, which we have those. So in your folder, there's 2 social media policies. That's a policy that we do not have. The HR would like to add to our personnel policy, so she's giving me 2 options, and she'd like for the board to choose between the 2. She adds that. No, we don't have a personnel social media policy, and we run into that from time to time with comments and messages.
So the attorney's concern is if you have something bound in a handbook that generally maybe evolved and it doesn't follow like the ordinances or the policies that are truly adopted.
Exactly.
So instead of a handbook, we give them a welcome package with.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm playing with words, but.
You're right, yeah.
You just call it a personnel policy instead of a handbook? Is it kind of like business license versus occupational tax, is the terminology you're using?
Well, no, I'm saying instead of trying to do a Reader's Digest condensed version, just give them the policy.
What was suggested to us was that ours was moved from an employee handbook to an employee employment guide. And then under the first, after the mission statement, after who we are, we put a thing in there that, about changes that can be made. You will be notified at the appropriate time if it affects you,
Right.
And then we upgrade ours every year.
Yeah. And we can do that so long as we don't give employees due process rights and employment, and so there's some things, and that's why I said, one of those things you mentioned a while ago is the ball of wax about employees having their heel rights. That's where they get due process. So, if you stay away from that, that'll work.
Yeah, ours just says in there, it has a place in there where we change one sheet that says edited, and we always use the 1st of December every year to do that.
Yeah.
And then we have each employee, even though they may have only been there 30 days and already signed, every employee signs again that they receive a copy of it or were notified of it. And like we say, we tell them, don't care if you read it or not, but this is what's going to keep you here and get you gone.
Exactly. And that's fine, that's perfectly fine. What I was talking with Derek and I were talking about is, you don't have that and then another set of bigger personnel policies here behind it.
No.
Yeah. And that's what this is, this book is, it's numbered the way the ordinance is numbered. So section 51-31, that's how it's printed in here too.
Right. Well, I will say this, from going from where you were at to what that is, let me just say this, that's the reason we need a county administrator too, because there's no way that HR put that. Forgive me, but we need something.
So we'll put on the agenda, coming for the 2 social media policies, which one the board would like, or either staff recommendation on which policy.
Staff recommendations better than recommendations.
Okay. Once we do that, then I'll get the board to approve the personnel policy.
Let me say this too, in fairness to the employees, that an employee guide is an essential tool, in fairness to the employee. Because, there were some changes made in regards to whether Georgia is actually a right to work state.
Where did you get, so I see one of them's from L.B. Thompson. Where did the other one come? Oh, what the sheriff's, okay. Whew. Okay, we can't do that one.
Yeah,
So,
Mike, I would probably have you find me a good one.
Okay. I don't think either, and L.B. Thompson is a great labor law firm, but I think just glancing at the first page, that one is not designed for local government. all of you guys that have employees in private business, you ain't got to worry about what we got to worry about right here, which is First Amendment rights.
Absolutely.
So Michael Moore has that situation over there now. He has a guy that says a lot of things, and posts a lot of things. He went in and changed his name, created a fake profile. Problem is, everybody in the county knows who it is.
So I just glanced at Michael's and it's illegal. I can tell from reading the first two sentences.
Yep.
I'm not making a joke. Michael has the advantage that most of his employees are deputies, and a different law applies to a person who holds the position of deputy. And he has more leeway there, and he could structure that to do what he needs to do. He has not done that.
God only knows what the Sheriff's Association tells him. There you go.
Amen, brother.
There you go.
They telling you a constitutional officer, go ahead.
Motion adjourned.
Yeah.
Guys,
But you never speak.
on your way out, I want to tell you as you're leaving, thank you very much, and thank you to Ms. Baxter for getting this together for us. This is a small, minute piece to what we do each day, but I do appreciate each of you.
I'll let y'all can meet without me then.
Zoom us in, all right?
Can I ask you that, are you gonna zoom in? But they don't.
We'll all